A confirmation for the audio, please, guys. If you're able to hear me out perfectly well, kindly confirm. Thank you. Shruti, for maps, always please understand that when we talk about the map pointing, the problem starts if we try to start learning all of the things that we look at. That should not be the approach when you open up the atlas. When you open up the atlas, it should be in order to understand that where is it, for example, the Kemur ranges lie. Where is it that you have the Mekal hills which lie? Where is it that you have the Vindhyas? What is the extent of it? So if you approach it with that curiosity, one of the areas one at a time, it will be much easier. The problem starts when we try to learn all of this, that upon the first glance, everything, and upon the first glimpse, everything should be imprinted in the mind. That is when you have a lot of confusion creeping up. So that should not be the approach. Approach should be different. Okay. Manohar, should we consider IPL for the current affairs? Have you ever found a question from IPL in the previous year question? Absolutely not. Sahil, sometimes I feel demotivated for no reason. See, every candidate who is normal, whose mindset is normal, they feel that demotivation every few days. Anyone who says that they don't feel demotivated, they are the ones who are abnormal. So it is a part of the process. You will have highs, you will have lows. And what differentiates the successful ones from the unsuccessful ones is they don't let the lows which happen. It can happen once a week, twice a week, or maybe once a month or twice a month. But during the highs, you have to maintain the maximum output. That is, you have to extract the maximum output. Only then will you be able to extract the most out of it. But because everybody feels demotivated after some point of time because the output is not as per their expected standard or some of the other factors. So that happens. Withstand through that, and then again, within a couple of days, you will feel recharged. Yes, it is absolutely okay. Yes, Pranay, that is correct. Very good. And about the Garjat hills also, Pranay, you can take a look into it, that how they are created. Look at the regions of these cratons that which would have created the Garjat hills. So that also will give you a significant good of amount of idea. Yes, Devansh, that is true. So hello, a very warm good evening to all of you and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to another session of Indian Geography, where we shall be again looking into the portion of the river systems. We shall introduce ourselves to the various different river systems that we have in our country, the major ones, obviously. And then after that, we shall be moving into the forest and soils. Okay, so here, basically, as we move ahead, and as is generally the case, most of us, we have been attending the session for almost a month now, and that continuity of the process, oftentimes in that process we fail to understand the progress that we have made. So that is why, and that progress is something which might not be very visible to you guys, but it is very visible to us when we take a look at the type of questions which are framed and the type of questions which are asked. So here, take a moment and then analyze where we started. Realize that how in the initial days, many of you had a lot of difficulty in understanding the basics about what are latitudes and what are longitudes, the formation of the planet, to the present context where we are discussing about the various different plates, the various different continents, the various different physical features. So whatever we have studied, that is sufficient. And you need to realize that. Many of the times what happens is that as candidates, we keep on studying, keep on repeating, or keep on following the syllabus. We get an idea of inadequacy, that maybe we need to study more, maybe we need to cover more of these areas. But whatever we have studied till now, even there, if you manage to do justice in terms of revision, that in itself can assure you very healthy returns in the examination. So always carry out the process of revision. So today we shall be starting with the portion of the peninsular rivers. Then we shall be taking a look at the few of the Himalayan rivers and the peninsular rivers as well, the factor of interlinking of rivers, whether that is something which should be done or not. Few of the examples of these interlinking which is being carried out, and we'll be moving on into the forests. Yaram Sethi, when all continents as one plate, is there any trace of rivers found, sir, that one river particles or sediments or minerals matching in different countries and continents? Yes, absolutely. When you take a look at the gold deposits that you find in western part of Africa, we have read that the source region for that lies in the region of Brazilian highlands. So obviously, at one point of time, a river system would have flowed in between these two areas, which would have carried these gold deposits. Right? Yes, rightly pointed out, Abhishek. And same is the case with the formation of, when you take a look at the Scottish Highlands and the Appalachian Mountains, both of these mountain ranges have been formed at the same time. But now they are thousands of kilometers away. So these are various evidences. You will find that in the evidence for continental drift theory, you will find that particular various different points mentioned there. So without further ado, let us initiate the discussion for the characteristics of peninsular drainage. So when we talk about the peninsular drainage, this is basically the drainage system which exists in the peninsular part of the country. Now here in the peninsular part of the country, the rivers, they are slightly different in characters as compared to the Himalayan drainage. Because in Himalayan drainage, when we come across it, the rivers, they are perennial, that is, the flow of the water is maintained throughout the year. And also, the rivers in the Himalayan drainage, they are fed by the melting of snow. So the amount of flow of water is also significant. Whereas in the case of the peninsular drainage, the river systems, they originate from the regions in the peninsular part of the country, and there we don't have any glacial movement or any ice portions which are present. So the origin of the rivers is mostly determined by the factors of rainfall, right? So these peninsular drainage, the rivers, are dependent on the rainfall, right? So basically that means what? During the dry season, the flow that you will find to be present in these rivers, that will be slightly reduced. Whereas during the rainy season, the flow will be significantly increased, whereas during the dry season, the flow will decrease. So there is a kind of a seasonality associated with the flow. So there is a seasonality associated with the flow. Okay, so that is a factor of peninsular drainage. There is always a factor of seasonality associated with the flow, where you will find that the flow significantly increases during the presence of rainy season, and the flow decreases during the dry conditions. Now, this peninsular drainage system is older than the Himalayas, obviously, because the peninsular system in itself, the peninsular region in itself, that has been created much earlier. And Himalayas, they got into, or they were created and they were formed at a slightly later date. Yaram Seti, as I told you, so there are evidences which are found in various different areas. There are evidences of placer deposits, etc., which are found. So please understand that is the answer, that yes, there are evidences which are found in various different parts of the world. And we have pointed it out in the continental drift theory. So basically, this peninsular system is much older than the Himalayan system. That is why the rivers, they are also older. Now here, in the peninsular setup, the types of rocks that you come across, those types of rocks are much older. The rocks will be much older. So, and these rocks are of what categories? These are igneous and metamorphic rocks, isn't it? So here in the peninsular system, you will find the bedrocks or the base rocks are mostly igneous and metamorphic. Now, as they are igneous and metamorphic rocks, so what do you think? Will they be eroded very easily, or will there be a slight amount of difficulty when it comes to erosional power of these rivers, of these particular rocks? What do you think? There will be difficulty in eroding them, isn't it? So, unlike the case of the Himalayan rivers, where the rivers could very easily change their path, they could very easily find a new path, they could form meanders, they could form all the different types of oxbow lakes, etc. That is a feature you don't particularly find in the region of the peninsular India. Why? Because the base rocks don't permit it. So that is why the rivers, they tend to flow in a predetermined and a predefined channel which is in existence. So here the rivers tend to flow in a predefined channel. Now, what is the slope of the peninsular region? When we talk about the peninsular plateau, what is the general slope that you will come across, east to west or west to east? What do you think? The general slope is west to east. So that is why you will find majority of the river systems, they originate in the west, close to the region of the Western Ghats, and they drain all the way into the region of Bay of Bengal. That is the flow that you will find in that case. So the general flow is always, so Western Ghats running close to the western coast, they act as a water divide. Water divide means what? Kind of a watershed. Right, that is what is indicated by the water divide. Yesterday we looked at the case of the Ambala water divide. The Ambala water divide separates the Indus River basin and the Ganga River basin. So here, the Western Ghats running close to the western coast, they act as a water divide between the major peninsular rivers, discharging their water in the Bay of Bengal. And you have the amongst the major rivers, the exception lies in the case of Narmada and Tapi, and that exception also persists only because they are able to flow through their rift valleys. So they are characterized by fixed course, absence of meanders, and a non-perennial flow of water. Non-perennial means the amount of water fluctuates through the year. The amount of water is not persistent or is not common throughout the year. Narmada and Tapi are exceptions which flow through the Rift Valley and from east to west. You have few of the smaller streams as well which move to from east to west. For example, you have river Mandavi in the region of Goa. Then in the Malabar plains, you have smaller ones like Bharatpuya and so on, which drain into the region of Arabian Sea. But all the large rivers, they will move from west to east. Okay. Now, here, when we take a look at it, this is the difference. This is the charted difference between the Himalayan and the peninsular drainage system. Use that for your prelims purposes. Okay. Use this for your prelims. Okay. So basically, if you take a look at the differences pointed out in this, so you'll have, in the case of place of origin, the Himalayan rivers basically are originating from the mountains covered with glaciers, whereas the peninsular rivers originating from the Peninsular Plateau and the region of the Central Highland. When we talk about the nature of the flow, so they are perennial in the case of Himalayan rivers, whereas they are seasonal, dependent on the monsoon rainfall in the case of the peninsular rivers. The types of drainage that you will find in the Himalayan region, mostly they will be consequent, dendritic, because they are moving through a kind of a sedimentary rock system, a kind of northern plain region, that is why dendritic, and few of the rivers will also be antecedent. Whereas the peninsular rivers, they will be mostly superimposed because it is moving through an older rock structure. So the rock structure which has got evolved, which has modified itself over the passage of time, that is the characteristic of the peninsular river. Okay, then the nature of the river, long courses in the case of the Himalayan, and peninsula, they are significantly and comparatively smaller. So accordingly, the river systems are also young in the case of Himalayan river system, and in the case of peninsular rivers, you'll find that you have old rivers which are in existence. Okay. Now, reason of source of origin of rivers from Western Ghats. So that is basically because the Western Ghats, they receive more rainfall. And if you take a look at the distribution of rainfall, so some portion of central India, that also receives rainfall as the Arabian Sea branch of monsoon enters through the Rift Valley of Narmada, and it causes heavy rainfall in the area of central India around Amarkantak. That is why that again becomes a source of origin. Otherwise, always Western Ghats will have more rainfall, huge amount of rainfall. Hence, the rivers will also originate from there. Okay. So, this is basically the characteristic of the peninsular and the Himalayan drainage. Now we will take a look at few of the river systems. We shall take a look at the characteristics of few of the river systems. We start with the Indus river system. Basically, first of all, we'll take a look at the Himalayan drainage, where we will take a look at the three major systems of the Himalayan drainage. That is the Indus, then you have the Ganga, and then you have the Brahmaputra. The list of the tributaries, etc., you will get in the additional reading materials as well. But nonetheless, a list will also be provided to you, which is present in the PPT as well. So that list will be provided to you. So you can always take a look at that. But understand the basics of it. So Indus River system, it is one of the largest river basins of the world, covering a total areal span of close to around 11 lakh square kilometer and having a total length of 2880 kilometer. However, Indus River system passes through 4 different countries. It has got its existence in 4 different countries. It is not only present in 1 or 2 of them. For example, where does it originate? It originates in the region of Mount Kailash, that is the Kailash ranges. There you have the Bokharchu glacier, and from there you have the origin of river Indus. And then initially it moves in a kind of a northwest direction. Then it enters India through the region of Ladakh. It cuts the Himalayas, and then after that it enters into the region of Pakistan, and then eventually drains into the Arabian Sea. So which four countries are covered here? In total, if I say that the Indus River system, they will be moving through 4 different countries. So which 4 different countries are we referring to here? So the region of Tibet, that is China. Then you have India. Then you also have Pakistan. And another one is Afghanistan. Very good, Pranay. And Shruti and Suhail also. So it is basically Afghanistan as well. All of you have given Afghanistan correct answer. So because you have few of the tributaries such as River Kabul, which originate from the region of Afghanistan, and they end up joining the river from the right hand side. Now here comes the concept of left bank and right bank tributaries as well. So what do we understand by the concept of a left bank tributary, and what do we understand by the concept of a right bank tributary? When we say a left bank or a right bank, that basically demarcates whether a river is joining the main, or a tributary is joining the main river from the left hand side or the right hand side. So how do you understand whether it is a left bank or a right bank? So suppose a river is flowing like this, right? If this is the flow, always place yourself at the portion of the river, look towards the direction of the flow, then your right hand side will form the right bank tributary. Right bank. And this, your left hand side, will be the left bank. And regardless of whatever is the direction, if this is the direction of the flow, again place yourself and look towards the direction of the flow. So the tributaries joining from your right hand side will be the right bank, and the tributaries joining from your left hand side will always be the left bank. Okay, so Indus is also referred to as Sindhu and is the westernmost Himalayan river which flows through the region of India. And this is basically the flow of the river. It originates from the region around Mansarovar. And here you will observe it initially moves like this. Then it starts flowing here and eventually enters into the region of Arabian Sea. Now, in this case, if you look and if you observe the tributaries, so you have various tributaries such as the Shyok, Gilgit, Zaskar, Hunza, Nubra, Shigar, Dras. These are the Himalayan tributaries, the smaller river systems. You have the Kabul, Khurram, Tochi, all of these. They are also basically the small rivers which are in existence, right? So the important right bank tributaries, if you take a look at it, so you have Kabul, Khurram, Tochi, Gomal, Sangar, even Gilgit. Then you have Nubra, right? All of these are right bank tributaries. Whereas when we talk about the left bank tributaries, we join it from the left hand side. So the major left bank tributaries are also referred to as the Panjnad. What is the Panjnad? Panjnad basically translates into 5 rivers. That is where the land of Punjab gets its name from. Punjab is named after that, right? Where you would have heard about the term Doab. Doab basically refers to a land which lies between 2 rivers. So when we talk about Punjab, it is basically a land of 5 rivers. So when we talk about the Panjnad, these are the 5 river systems which meet river Indus from the left hand side. So which are those 5 rivers? You have basically Chenab, or if we start, then you have Jhelum, Chenab, then you have Ravi or Satluj, Ravi, Byas. These are your Panjnad. Together, they are referred to as Panjnad. Now, all of these rivers, eventually they meet each other, and then finally they drain into river Indus, where they meet river Indus at the region of Mithankot in Pakistan, and eventually it drains into Arabian Sea from the region around Sindh in Pakistan. That is where it eventually empties itself into the region of Arabian Sea. Now, it is a Himalayan river. So do you think it will form a delta? What do you think? Will it form a delta? Yes. So that is where, because it is again a Himalayan river, so it will carry huge amount of sediments and silt along with it. That is why it forms a very fertile delta immediately before meeting the region of Arabian Sea. And if you recall, if you try to remember, I understand the previous classes would have been forgotten very easily. So even if you try to remember that like a bad dream, still you will remember that we discussed in oceanography the presence of a kind of a submarine canyon at the mouth of river Indus as well. So river Indus along with river Ganga, they end up forming significant amount of submarine canyons in the continental shelf and slope in the water body as they enter into it. Okay. Now, here, after that, the major river system is the Ganga river system. Now, observe here. Observe a fact for the catchment area. Yesterday, many of you had a question for catchment area that indicate to us what is the catchment area. So, this will be the catchment area of the entirety of the Ganga river system. I hope you are able to see the different shade of yellow, right? I hope you are able to see that. And then you have the purple shade indicating the flow of river Brahmaputra. So that is the catchment area of Brahmaputra. So in that entire area that is demarcated by yellow, so if you have any of the amount of rainfall, any amount of water which is present, eventually it will drain into river Ganga. Okay. So when we talk about the Ganga river system, it is easily the most relevant, or rather the most important river system in terms of the size of the population that it caters to, and also the amount of cultural reverence that river Ganga has got associated with it. So you will find that Ganga has got a unique phenomena where different cultural traditions from different parts of the country, all of them, they revere river Ganga quite significantly. And river Ganga is important as well, from supporting the daily lives of all the millions of people who live across its banks directly, to the aspect of the economic purposes that it solves by providing a source of inland navigation as well, and also in many areas fisheries, and also environment, because here you have the Gangetic dolphin which is also to be found. Now in this river Ganga basically ends up originating as different streams. So you have two river systems which originate, that is Alaknanda and Bhagirathi. Alaknanda and Bhagirathi. Alaknanda originates from the region close to Badrinath, and Bhagirathi originates from the region of Gangotri, where the Gangotri glacier now is present near the region of Gomukh. So from there river Bhagirathi originates. Both of them, they meet each other at the region of Devprayag. And after that confluence, the river is referred to as river Ganga. So the name river Ganga comes into existence after a few hundred or after 100 kilometers since its origin source. Okay. Now here you will come across certain terminologies. For example, Prayag. So Prayag is basically a term used for confluence of rivers. Whenever you find the term Prayag, it always refers to the confluence of the river system. And here, Ganga is joined by the mighty Himalayan rivers from the left bank side, as well as one of the major Himalayan river, that is river Yamuna, which originates from the region of Yamunotri. It also joins river Ganga from the right bank or the right hand side, right? Now, eventually, as it enters the region of the lower Ganga plain, that is the region of Jharkhand, Bihar, eastern part of Jharkhand, Bihar and West Bengal, at that point of time, the flow of the river significantly reduces. Obviously, in terms of the velocity, the flow will reduce. So when the flow reduces, that is when the river starts generating distributaries. I hope we understand the difference between a tributary and a distributary. And the difference is very simple, associated with the name itself. Tributary, so it adds water, right? So tributaries will always add water to the main river. Whereas when we talk about distributary, it basically differentiates, or it carries water away from the main river into the region where the river is emptying itself. So here you observe river Hooghly. River Hooghly is a distributary of river Ganga. Okay, so river Hooghly is a distributary. Sakshi will come to Alaknanda, don't worry. It is a distributary. Now this river Hooghly, it drains through the lower Ganga plain, some part of the Peninsular Plateau is the Chota Nagpur Plateau as well, but mostly through the region of the lower Ganga plain. And this lower Ganga plain has got a unique name associated with it. Let me check your factual knowledge. Any of us here aware of the unique name associated with the lower Ganga plain? Yes, Hooghly is in West Bengal. No, not Sundarbans. No. So the lower Ganga plain, that is the region of West Bengal and the region of eastern part of Bihar and Jharkhand. So the lower Ganga plains, they are also referred to as Rad plains. Okay, so the lower Ganga plains, that has got a unique name associated with it. That is also referred to as the Rad plains. Overall, all of this is a part of the northern plains itself, where you have the region to the west referred to as the upper Ganga plain, then the region around the area of UP, middle Ganga plain, and then you have the lower Ganga plain, which is the Rad plains. Now here, observe that river Ganga suddenly takes a southward bend. And that southward bend is taken immediately to the north of Rajmahal Hills. It is beyond the Rajmahal Hills. Here you have the Rajmahal Hills. Rajmahal Hills. Beyond Rajmahal Hills, that is when you have the presence of the Malda Gap or the Rajmahal Garo Gap. That is where river Ganga finds an exit, and eventually it enters into the region of Bangladesh, where it joins with river Brahmaputra and forms the Sundarbans. That is the largest river delta in the world. Now, this river Hooghly is joined by a tributary, that is river Damodar. Now, river Damodar is also one of the most prominent rivers. Nowadays, you don't hear much about it because river Damodar is no longer what it used to be 100 years back. River Damodar was famously referred to as the sorrow of Bengal because of the huge amount of floods and the devastating floods that it could cause in the region of West Bengal. So that is why it was referred to as the sorrow of Bengal. And this river Damodar is also unique, just like Narmada and Tapi, because this Damodar also flows through a rift valley. Flows through Rift Valley. And this is very, very rich in mineral deposits because the Chota Nagpur Plateau, very old, and across this Rift Valley system, you will find coal deposits which are as old as 200 million years old. So that is why across the river Damodar is also significantly polluted for that matter. And this pollution is mostly due to mining and industrial waste which happens in this entirety of the region. So while earlier it was referred to as the sorrow of Bengal, now this river has been tamed by the construction of many multi-purpose power projects, the hydropower projects that you have. Amongst the big ones, you have the Maithon Dam, which is present at the boundary region between Jharkhand and West Bengal, near the districts of Asansol in the region of West Bengal. That is where you have the Maithon Dam, which has controlled this river Damodar. And also because of incessant sand mining which has been carried out across the Damodar river bed, especially in the present day region of Jharkhand, which earlier used to belong to the state of Bihar. So Damodar has been significantly mined. Sand mining is very significant, and sand mining is very harmful for the river flow. Why will you might ask that why is it so? Why is it that sand mining is harmful? Because understand the aspect of channel morphology. As those of you in the optional area, you will study about channel morphology and the flow gradient, etc. But I will not take you to that great depth. But if you allow me, here, let's suppose this is the river channel, and this is where the river system is. So this is basically your sand. This is area from where the sand mining is done, isn't it? Now, groundwater is also present in the regions where you have the river flow. Generally, you will find that the groundwater is present at a much shallower level. That is what ends up supporting the river quite significantly. So here, let's suppose this is basically your groundwater reservoir. Yes, Nitesh, Barakar is an important place across the banks of river. And Barakar is, if you take a look at Barakar, again very close to Maithon Dam, there also significant amount of sand mining is done. And a lot of mining waste is also dumped in that region. So let's suppose here you have the groundwater. And understand this process, guys. Once you understand it, you will never forget it. So, if I mine up the sand, ideally, what does the common sense tell us? That if this sand is removed, in certain areas, this river will have an interconnect with the groundwater itself. So ideally, the water level should be much more enriched. The groundwater should provide the water to the river flow. So in the initial days, that does happen. If you keep on removing the sand and the groundwater dilutes the river flow itself, the flow in the river for temporary duration will increase. But what happens during the dry season? During the dry season, when there is not significant amount of rainfall, so all this groundwater will immediately, as a result of the capillary action that you have where water starts coming out through the pores. So as a result of that, all the groundwater will form a part of the river channel. Now, for 1 year, this has happened. For 2 years, this has happened. What happens in the duration of 5 to 10 years? Almost all that groundwater would be utilized in various different seasons. Now, the rate of recharge of groundwater, I hope you will agree with this fact, with the basic fact that the rate of recharge of groundwater is very slow as compared to the rate at which it can be depleted or at the rate at which it can be exhausted by supplying water to the river channel. So as a result of that incessant sand mining, while in the initial years, in the initial couple of years, the flow will be regulated, the flow will be more. But after 4 to 5 years, that entire region will start becoming water scarce. Why? Because all the groundwater, even from the surrounding areas, they will also be depleted. So that is why sand mining is so dangerous. And it is basically carried out across almost all the riverbeds in the entirety of the country. In fact, if you have any of your relatives, if they are frank enough, who is in administration or the police service, or any of your friends who is in police service as IPS officers in this region of Bihar, UP, or even in regions of West Bengal, they will all attest to the fact that there is a common adage, a common saying amongst the inspectors, the police inspectors and the SHOs who are posted in these areas, that once you get a posting across one of these river banks, and if that posting lasts even for 1 year, then you won't need to, and what they say is that we won't need to earn anything else, or we won't need to do job anymore for the rest of our lives. That is the amount of money which sand mining gives them. Few of the estimates provided by the political leaders, and if you talk to them, if you talk to the police officers, they will tell you that they end up earning in crores per month. So that is why the ideal plum posting for the police, at the lower grade, they always want to get posting near the river channels, so that this sand mining mafia, which is very strong, that sand mining mafia can basically benefit them. I hope that amongst all of us, if we become officers, that is not followed. So that is the harmful aspect of sand mining. That is why most of them, you'll find even after they get caught, what is the worst that will happen? They will get suspended, but they would have earned enough money by that point of time to fight cases for their lifetime. They will get pension, or they might even get reinstated after 20, 30 years. Still, they will have enough money for multiple generations. So that is the negative motivation which many of them have to come into government job. For example, this sand mining mafia is particularly stronger in this particular area across the Chambal Basin. You would have heard about the news stories where few of the IPS officers who were posted in the region around Gwalior, those of you belonging from the region of Gwalior, Morena, Bamor, in the northern portion of Madhya Pradesh, you would be very well aware of the clout that the sand mining mafias have. Few of the IPS officers have lost their lives in the fight against those sand mafias. So they are very, very powerful in this region. And that is one of the prime sources why this entire region, despite the aspect of the presence of the continuous flow of the Himalayan rivers, still it is very, very water scarce. That is why in these areas, now if you start extracting groundwater, in many of the areas, the groundwater level has gone so low that along with that, you have arsenic and fluoride as parts of rocks which come up. That is the level of groundwater, that much it has depleted. But that is the reality. And UPSC has been asking this question multiple times in the mains examination in GS paper 1, that why is it that there is water scarcity despite the presence of the Himalayan rivers, despite the presence of glaciers and snow melting? Why is it that this region faces water scarcity? One of the areas, or one of the characteristics, is sand mining and vicious sand mining. Now, we are a country, we learn from each other, isn't it? So this was a phenomena earlier very prevalent only across the Ganga river system, even across Punjab. In Punjab and Haryana also you will find this very predominantly. In fact, in Rajasthan as well. But now, one country, one code. So all of the river systems are now being exploited like this. We learn from our practices. So earlier, this was a practice not to be found predominantly in the southern part of the country, but now even there, you'll find that certain rivers across, for example, River Godavari, River Kaveri, they are also being mined in an illegal manner, right? Now here, if you take a look at it, basically, here, this is joined by various different streams from the left bank and the right bank as well. So there is a ban on sand mining for most of the states, Vijay. And so is there a ban on many of the other things, but that happens. So here, first of all, it is joined by a tributary, that is Ram Ganga. Ram Ganga is the tributary which flows through the Corbett Tiger Reserve, the Corbett National Park, that is basically drained by Ram Ganga. If you try to recollect these from this basic aspect, from any of the particular phenomena or any of the anecdote like this, the learning will be much more prolonged. You will never forget it easily. Amongst the river systems that drain here, you will basically find that you have few of the major ones. For example, Ghagra, very significant, very large river system on its own. And so is the case with Gandak as well. Now, this river Gandak basically again joins with river Ganga in the region of Bihar. And you have Kosi, which is an antecedent river. Now, this river Kosi, at its point of origin, it is joined by 7 different streams. They make up this river Kosi. Now, all these streams bring their own amount of sedimentary load. That is where you have a lot of sedimentary load carried by the river Kosi. That is why river Kosi floods so easily. And that is the reason why river Kosi tends to change its path or shifts its course, whereas the others do not, because the sedimentary load carried by river Kosi is very high. Okay. Now, here, let us take a look at few of the characteristics of this river system. So it rises in the Gangotri Glacier near Gomukh in the Uttarkashi district of Uttarakhand. Now, those of you belonging from Uttarakhand, or those of you who have got a chance or who have visited this place multiple times, you'll find the glaring example of climate change being exhibited in this area. Earlier, the climatic records indicate that very close to Gangotri, that is where river Ganga would originate. The glaciers would come up till, let's say this is the region. So, the glaciers would come up till that kind of an extent. Now, slowly and steadily, after this, the glaciers would melt and you would have water flow. But slowly and steadily, due to climate change, this glacier has been receding. That is, now it is present only till here, and now the meltwater is generated from here itself. So that is why now you will find that the Gomukh, where actually the flow of river Bhagirathi starts, that is almost a 22-kilometer trek away from Gangotri. So it has receded, and it is receding at an incredibly fast rate. Okay. Now, here at Devprayag, Bhagirathi meets Alaknanda, and thereafter it is referred to as Ganga. This river has a length of more than 2,500 kilometers, and it moves through various different states as well. The National Waterway 1 that exists across river Ganga. Between where to where do you have the National Waterway 1? You have it between which areas? Very good. No, Pratyaksh. It has been extended. Binita Sadia is across river Brahmaputra. So, National Waterway 1 extends all the way from Allahabad, or rather Prayagraj now, all the way. It is extended up to the river Hooghly into Haldia. Haldia port is situated on the banks of river Hooghly. Okay, so that is where you have the National Waterway 1, which extends and exists in that region. National Waterway 2 is in the region of Brahmaputra. We will take a look at it when we come to the portion of transportation. Okay. Now, so that is the characteristic of this river. But as I told you, this river tends to originate at different streams. You have Alaknanda and you have Bhagirathi. And if you observe it carefully, you will get an idea about the cultural reverence that we provide to the rivers. Wherever these streams and rivers originate, be it the peninsular river system, be it the Himalayan river system, we tend to revere those places. We worship those places. For example, Alaknanda has its source at Satopant Glacier above Badrinath. So we worship Badrinath. And this is the very famous image of Devprayag, where you have finally the Alaknanda and Bhagirathi, where they meet. After that, it is referred to as river Ganga. Okay. Now, when we talk about it, in the region of Uttarakhand, in that area, you basically have the confluence of multiple streams which eventually makes up the river Ganga. And all these confluences taken together, they are referred to as Panch Prayags. Because Prayag is what? Prayag is referred to as the place of confluence of rivers. Vaibhav, it is said that Tehri Dam is holding the silt of river Ganga. Otherwise, it would have flooded like that of Kosi or Brahmaputra. No. Whatever is said is incorrect. Tehri Dam holds significant amount of silt. Tehri Dam is very dangerous for the ecosystem, and the seismicity of that place, that holds a lot of risk for Tehri Dam. If Tehri Dam breaks, or if there is a crack which develops, that will mean devastation for millions of people downstream. Right up till the place around Kanpur almost, it is expected that the region will be very flooded. So that is why it is a very dangerous proposition to hold more water in Tehri Dam. Okay. So here, that is where in the region of Uttarakhand, you have the existence of what is referred to as the Panch Prayags, the 5 Prayags. Basically, observe here that you have Alaknanda which originates. Alaknanda which originates from the region of Badrinath. First of all, it is joined from the left bank side by Dhauli Ganga. Dhauli Ganga, which also comes from around the region of Uttarkashi in Uttarakhand. This is the region, this is the river which experiences lot of avalanches, and it is across this river system where you have the region of Joshimath as well, right? And if you remember early last year, that is in the early part of 2022, you had a major disaster across Dhauli Ganga, where you had an NTPC Vishnugarh project, the Tapovan Vishnugarh project, which was completely devastated because of huge amount of flooding which happened across Dhauli Ganga. Now that happens because you had a glacial lake which outburst because of significant amount of avalanches which happened. That is why Dhauli Ganga tends to always cause a lot of landslides across this region and causes massive casualties and landslides in this area. So Dhauli Ganga joins Alaknanda at the region of Vishnu Prayag. Okay. And then after that, it is joined by Nandakini. Nandakini, which originates close to the region, close to the hill or the mountain of Nanda Devi, close to the area of Nanda Devi. That is where Nandakini ends up originating. It joins Alaknanda at a place called Nandaprayag. Then from the other side of Nanda Devi area, there you have Pindar Ganga which originates and it joins Alaknanda at Karnaprayag. Then finally it is joined from the right hand side by another of these Himalayan rivers, which is Mandakini, and this originates at Kedarnath. So the Kedarnath disaster which happened in 2013, that is 15th of June 2013, when the Kedarnath disaster happened, at that point of time, it was river Mandakini which ended up flooding and significantly over flooding. So that caused an effect in the downstream almost up till Kanpur and Allahabad. So you can understand the impact that these floods in each of these streams, the impact that they have for a long distance. So Mandakini joins river Alaknanda at Rudraprayag. Okay. And then eventually you have Bhagirathi, which originates near Gangotri, that joins it at Devprayag. And then river Yamuna, originating from the region of Yamunotri, it joins river Ganga at the region of Allahabad, or what is also referred to as Prayagraj. Okay, so that is basically the system of Panch Prayags which are in existence. These are your Panch Prayags. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the Panch Prayags which you will find in existence in the Himalayan region of Uttarakhand. And all these are always revered. You will find a lot of temples, lot of places of worship in these regions, not only in these areas, but also where these streams originate. They are also significantly revered. Okay. Now, then the other important tributaries, if you take a look into, so basically River Kosi is very, very important, very famously referred to as the sorrow of Bihar as well, because of the huge amount of floods that they cause. Here you have another tributary, that is River Mahananda. River Mahananda is another tributary of Mahananda. So while River Kosi always has a kind of a surplus of water, River Mahananda experiences a kind of a deficiency in the flow. The flow of water is significantly lesser. That is why there has been a plan which has been afoot to transfer the excess water from Kosi into a stream in the region of Mahananda, a tributary of Mahananda, that is River Mechi. Okay. So that is where this is basically the plan to transfer excess water from Kosi into Mechi, which is again a tributary of River Mahananda. So this is basically the general characteristic. So here, okay, is the noise very disturbing again? Voice is disturbing or the voice is getting disturbed? Because both are different. If the voice is disturbing, that is bad. If the voice is getting disturbed, that can be corrected. But if the voice in itself is disturbing, then we can't do anything about it. Okay, voice is getting disturbed. Fair enough. Is it still happening? Okay. Let me check. Okay, is the audio okay or is it still getting disturbed? It is okay now? Fine? Right? Good. Thank you. See, if the voice in itself is disturbing, my dear friends, so we have already conducted around 20-21 classes. So we can't do anything about my voice anymore. Okay? So, yeah. But if the disturbance becomes unbearable, kindly let me know. Okay? So then we come to one of the mightiest river systems in South Asia. Mightiest in terms of the flow of water that is present. The flow of water is very high in this Brahmaputra river system. And basically, yes, there will be a class tomorrow. Why won't there be a class tomorrow? There is a class tomorrow. So basically, this Brahmaputra system, it carries huge amount of water, very high volume of water. So volume of water which is available is very high. Tomorrow is Good Friday, is it? No. Tomorrow is Thursday, and Good Friday doesn't happen on a Thursday, as far as I am aware. You guys have read more, so please let me know. Volume of water is very high. Okay? Now here, it originates again from the same area almost, where you have River Satluj and River Indus also originating. That is across the Kailash ranges. No, there is no Good Friday holiday, and we will have a class tomorrow as well. Okay, tomorrow also we have a class, day after tomorrow also we have a class, Monday also we have a class, and we'll see if we need an extra class or not. We'll let you know. Okay, So basically, the Brahmaputra river system originates very close to the place where you have Indus and Satluj river originating. That is across the Kailash ranges near Lake Mansarovar. So basically, it originates from the Chemyangdung glacier of the Kailash range near the Mansarovar lake. Now, initially, this tends to flow from west to east, and as it flows, it lies in between the mountain ranges, so it doesn't have the ability to have a significant amount of variation. However, across the range or across the region of Namcha Barwa, as the Himalayas, they take a sudden syntaxial bend, the Brahmaputra also takes a syntaxial bend. In fact, this river is not known as Brahmaputra as it originates. In the region of Tibet or South Tibet where it flows, at that point of time, it is referred to as Yarlung Sangpo or Sangpo, which basically translates into the purifier, right? And then it enters into the region of Arunachal Pradesh. As it enters into Arunachal Pradesh, there we refer to it as what? It is referred to as Siang, right? Still, it is not referred to as Brahmaputra. Eventually, around the bordering of area of Arunachal and the bordering region of Assam, that is where it enters into the plain region, around the region of Sadia. That is where you have the Sadia bridge, which has been constructed across river Brahmaputra, which is very massive as well. So that is where it enters the plains. And after that, it is referred to as Brahmaputra. And from Sadia, it continues to flow in the Assam plains. It drains the Assam plains, makes it very fertile. It is joined by various tributaries from left and right bank side as well. And then from the region around Dhubri, it enters into the region of Bangladesh. So the flow, it traverses eastwards longitudinally for a distance of close to around 1200 kilometer in a dry and flat region of southern Tibet, where it is referred to as Sangpo, which means the purifier. And then it emerges as a turbulent and dynamic river after carrying out or carving out a very deep gorge. As it bends, it carves out a very deep gorge around the region of Namcha Barwa. The river emerges from the foothills under the name of Siang or Dihang. So as it enters into the region of Arunachal Pradesh, it is referred to as Siang or Dihang. Only after this river enters into the plains, after that it is referred to as Brahmaputra. Okay, now this Brahmaputra, because it carries huge amount of water, it also is able to carry humongous amount of sedimentary load along with it. And this river is particularly known for the width that it has as it enters the plains. In certain areas in the region of Upper Assam, if you go there, the river is so very wide that in the case of the rainy seasons and so on, if you stand on one side of the river bank, you won't even be able to look at the other bank because that is how wide it is. In few of the areas, the multiple channels of the river which are in existence, they carve out few of the small riverine islands in between. And that is why the bridges which are constructed across Brahmaputra, you will find that they are multiple kilometers in length. So this Brahmaputra, it carves out various riverine islands. Riverine islands. And the largest riverine island is present in Assam. Very good. Largest riverine island is what? Majuli. Okay. That is the largest riverine island created by river Brahmaputra. So much so, Majuli has got its own constituency. And in the assembly elections, Majuli gets its own MLA as well. So this riverine island is not unlike your other riverine islands where nobody will live. So you have significant amount of habitation happening across this area as well. So when we come to the tributaries, on the right hand side, it is joined by Subansiri, Kameng, Manas, Teesta, and Sankosh. On the left bank side, Buri Dihing and Dhansiri, Dibang, Sikang, and Lohit. These are your major tributaries. So UPSC asked this question twice in 2015 and 2016. Consecutively, it asked this question, that it mentioned few of the tributaries and it asked which of them are a tributary of river Brahmaputra. UPSC did the same exercise or carried out the same exercise even for river Godavari as well. So for major rivers, if you are just aware that what are the tributaries, that will be more than sufficient. Okay, and this will come slowly, my dear friends. If you have that kind of an expectation from yourself that I look at these tributaries and it will be imprinted in my mind. If it is not getting imprinted in my mind, something is wrong with the content. Please don't have such higher expectations from yourself unless and until you're a direct descendant from Einstein himself. I'm sure all of us have a very normal and an average level of mind. So it will take some time for you to remember this. It will come with multiple revisions. Okay, so just be aware about the major river systems and its tributaries. See, if any random minor river is asked, none of them will get it correct. Only few of the candidates will get it correct by an absolute guesswork. It is a different matter when those candidates will come out of the exam hall. They will tell you that since their previous birth, they knew the answer, but they would have marked it out as a pure guess. So don't worry about those questions. But if a major river and its tributary is asked, all of them will get it correct. At least the candidates that you have to concern yourself with, they will get it correct. So you can't afford a mistake in that, right? So you should be aware which are the major tributaries. So you have Subansiri, Kameng, Manas, Teesta, and Sankosh. These are your right bank tributaries. Out of this, Teesta is always in prominence. Teesta is always in news. You'll find that mentioned in news. Why? Because of the water sharing dispute which exists between India and Bangladesh. And Teesta has got a very unique kind of water sharing history if you talk about it. So Bangladesh always has been trying to get water from river Teesta, a significant share of it. But the northern portion of Bengal from where river Teesta flows through, that again is deficient in water. So the farmers in that region also require that amount of water. But nonetheless, because it is a Himalayan river, Bangladesh expects us to share a larger amount of water. So earlier, during the previous government, when you had Dr. Manmohan Singh as the Prime Minister, at that point of time when India started increasing the depth of relationship with Bangladesh, when Dr. Singh visited Bangladesh, he made a promise and the government of India made a promise that we will be sharing the waters of river Teesta. That provided significant amount of rejoicing. There was a lot of celebration. There was a lot of relief amongst the people as well. The government of Bangladesh also celebrated that, look, India is our good friend, etc., etc. But when he came back, the West Bengal government basically came up that, why did you promise this? We are not going to share the waters with Bangladesh. So that is when India was left red-faced. And as it happened, India did not share its water. Now, again, when the new government came in, this time Prime Minister Modi visited Bangladesh. Again, the government of India repeated that promise, reiterated that promise, that the earlier promise which was made will make it come true and will share the waters of river Teesta. Again, when the Prime Minister came back, the West Bengal government said nothing happening of that sort. So even today, when you talk about it, there is a lot of grievance which is present amongst the larger population of Bangladesh, amongst the government of Bangladesh, about the sharing of river Teesta and the Teesta waters. That is why you will find the phenomena that whenever you have any Bangladeshi delegation who comes to India or Indian delegation who goes to Bangladesh, river Teesta is always to be mentioned in the portion of current affairs. So you should be aware of this. To the east of river Teesta, you also have another unique feature that Shivalik is absent in this area for a brief region between Teesta and river Raidak. That is where Shivalik is briefly absent in this area. Okay. Now, all of these rivers, they significantly carry the Himalayan waters, the waters from these glaciers, and that is where they are very important for even the wildlife which dots this entire region. So all the national parks and the wildlife sanctuaries which lie in this area, they heavily depend on the waters provided by these rivers. Okay, right? I hope that is understood. Which are the major rivers and tributaries we have to look, Amit? Basically, the major rivers as Ganga and Brahmaputra. Obviously, Ganga river system, I don't think that UPSC will ask an easy question as the Ganga river system, because most of us would have heard about the various tributaries of river Ganga at some point of time or the other. But Indus, Brahmaputra, then Mahanadi, then you have Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri. These river systems, look at it and its tributary as well. You can find the mention of these tributaries if you open up the Byju's book, if you open up the NCERTs, everywhere you'll find that to be mentioned. In the PPT also, I have mentioned it out. Okay, and I will give you a kind of a website link as well, through which you can always access it is a government website, so it will give you a detail about all the river systems, the tributaries, the major water storage systems, the major dams, the various interlinking programs which are being carried out, and also the status of those programs also. These are the states. Now, what are the major tributaries? So if you take a look at the tributaries, you'll find the major tributaries. Amongst the major tributaries, one of the largest tributaries and the most important is Shionath. Now, here you have the Shionath. Is it a left bank or a right bank tributary? What do you think? Is it a left bank or a right bank tributary? Beautiful. It is a left bank tributary. So you have Shivnath, right? Or Shivnath as you spell it. Please don't get offended if I spell it anything incorrect. I always consider you guys to be more wiser ones. So if you find the spelling to be incorrect, correct it when you write it out. Okay, then you have Hasdev, right? Mand and Ebe. These are your major left bank tributaries. So Shivnath, Hasdev, Mand, Ebe. And then you have Tel and Ong as right bank tributaries. Then you have Tel and Ong as the right bank tributaries. So these are your major tributaries of river Mahanadi. Okay? Jonk is also one of those. Correct. Then we have river Godavari. It is the largest river of the peninsular river system. It originates very close to the district, or in the district of Nashik. You have a very famous place of reverence, that is Trambakeshwar. So that is where river Godavari originates, in the Western Ghats, in the laps of the Western Ghats. That is where it originates, and it ends up flowing to the east and drains into the region of Bay of Bengal. Okay, so that is where you'll find that it originates near Trambakeshwar in the Nashik district of Maharashtra and discharges its water in Bay of Bengal. It is the largest peninsular river system, and hence it is also referred to as the Dakshin Ganga. Okay, now here you will find that the major tributaries will come to it. So the states Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, even Telangana. Telangana also lies across the catchment area of river Godavari. Okay, in fact, Telangana is very dependent on this river Godavari for the availability of water. Otherwise, Telangana is a dry state. Not a dry state like Gujarat or Bihar, but a dry state in the sense that you don't have enough rainfall there, right? So that is how it is a dry state. So in that case, it is completely dependent on the availability of the river waters from river Godavari that provides water. Drinking water supply, irrigational water supply in Telangana is provided from river Godavari. You have significant amount of water storage structures which have been constructed across the right bank tributaries of Godavari. You have the Nizam Sagar, you have the Singur water storage structures. Both of them, they are very helpful in providing water to Telangana. So the famous water storage structures, there are many of them. Isapur is also there, but amongst the water systems or the storage systems which provide water to Telangana, you have Singur and Nizam Sagar. Storage systems. Yes, it is on Manjra. Storage systems. They provide water to Telangana. Okay. Now, the tributaries, principal tributaries of the river are Pravara, Purna, Manjra. It is the right bank tributary. Amongst the right bank tributary, this is the major one. Okay. Most of the tributaries of river Godavari you will find is left bank. This is the right bank. Then you have Penganga, Vardha, Vainganga, Pranahita. So basically Vainganga, Penganga and Vardha, the water meets and then forms the Pranahita, right? And Pranahita is the one which meets river Godavari. You have Indravati, which drains through the region around Chhattisgarh, Odisha border as well. And this is the one which moves through the very famous Indravati Tiger Reserve, the Maner and the Sabri. These are your major tributaries. So this river Godavari again experiences very heavy floods in its lower reaches, mostly during the month of Generally, September and August to September is when you will find the lower reaches of the Godavari to be flooded. And to the south of Polavaram, where it forms a very picturesque gorge. In fact, again, a kind of a recommendation, if ever you get an opportunity to travel through railways across the river Godavari or travel through railways across the eastern coast, you absolutely should. Even though, an honest opinion, the travel in railway through the western coast is much more picturesque, because that is where you get to travel through the Konkan rail, you get to travel through the very beautiful western Ghat systems, and it starts from the state of Maharashtra itself, where you will find very beautiful gorges, you'll find estuaries, you'll find waterfalls, and it is a kind of an engineering marvel. But across the eastern coast as you travel, region of Rajamundry, that is where you have a very large railway bridge. Immediately after crossing the railway station of Rajamundry, you have a very large railway bridge. That is where river Godavari makes a very significant delta. And that delta is very wide, and that gives you an idea about what a delta really looks like. So that is where river Godavari forms a very wide delta. In fact, in the lower reaches, in the region around Krishna and Godavari deltaic region, that is where even the eastern Ghats are discontinuous, and this is a portion which is also very rich in hydrocarbons or fossil fuels. So basically, Rajamundry, where is it? Rajamundry is in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so basically in this region, also rich in fossil fuels, very fertile as well. So that is why whenever you get a chance to travel through these areas by railways, you should absolutely grab it with both hands. You get to observe the physiography like nowhere else. No kind of YouTube videos, no kind of animation will give you that kind of an experience which you gain firsthand, in fact. Then we come to another major river, that is the second largest river of the Peninsular River System, that is River Krishna. It is the second largest east flowing river. Now, this originates near Mahabaleshwar in the Western Ghats, which are referred to as Sahyadri in the region of Maharashtra. And the famous tributaries are Ghat Prabha, Mal Prabha, Bhima, Tungabhadra, and Musi. Okay, so here, when we talk about River Musi, Musi is one of the most famous ones out of all these. Why? Because it moves through a very famous city, a very important city, that is Hyderabad. Drains through Hyderabad. Okay, Tungabhadra. So it originates as River Tunga and Bhadra, and they meet each other. In between them, they have a very fertile land that is referred to as Tungabhadra Doab. So I don't know if you have read the portion of medieval history till now or not, but when you read the portion of medieval history and when you come across the fact of the Vijayanagar and the Bahmanis, at that point of time, when you look at it, most of the South Indian kingdoms in this region, that is the peninsular region, they always had a conflict for control of the Tungabhadra Doab, because this used to be very fertile and this used to reap multiple different crop cycles within the same year. So the Tungabhadra Doab is again very, very fertile. Okay, it is in fact across this region, that is where you have River Bhadra, that is very rich in iron deposits as well, iron ore. So that is where you have the iron and steel industry also situated. And here, the wildlife is also very significantly rich. You have the very significantly tiger-rich area of the Bhadra Tiger Reserve situated in this region as well. So here, 27% lies in Maharashtra, 44% in Karnataka, 29% in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. That is the distribution of River Krishna. So here you will observe, this is where River Bhima comes and joins it. Here you have Tungabhadra, right? Tunga and Bhadra, they make up Tungabhadra. You have Vedavati, Ghatprabha, Malprabha, Musi, Muneru. These are your major tributaries of river Krishna. Okay? Yes, correct. So then, basically, we come to one of the river systems in the southern part of the country, which evokes a lot of passion, a lot of sentiment in the state through which it flows through. Sentiment, yes, this is worshipped as well, but sentiment for water sharing as well. That is River Kaveri. Now, River Kaveri originates in the Brahmagiri hills of Kodagu district, that is near Coorg. You have a place which is referred to as Thal Kaveri. From there, and it is a place of worship. If you visit that region, you will observe the origin of River Kaveri, and basically people walk up to the top of the hill where you have in a kind of a temple, that region, a kind of a lake or a kind of a tank is enclosed, and that is referred to be the origin point of River Kaveri. So from there it originates. It drains through the states of Karnataka, parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and in the upper reaches, that is in the region of Karnataka and Kerala, this river system receives rainfall as a result of the advancing monsoon system. So that makes it significantly rich in water availability. Whereas the region around the Coromandel coast, that is the lower stretches of River Kaveri, that receives water as a result of the retreating monsoon. So allowing significant presence of water through the various different seasons in the River Kaveri. Okay? Himanshi, anything can be the correct spelling. Even if you write Kaveri or Kaveri, anything you write, nobody will mark it incorrect. So the upper catchment area receive rainfall during the southwest monsoon season, and the lower part during the retreat or the northeast monsoon season. This is a region which has been embroiled in a lot of interstate dispute, and so have been the other peninsular river systems. Generally, you will not find the Himalayan river systems being embroiled in disputes. But the peninsular river systems, they are always disputed in terms of water sharing. And think about it logically, why? Because the availability of water flow, that is basically very limited in the case of peninsular rivers. Whereas in the case of Himalayan rivers, you have enough amount of water availability. In fact, the problem is surplus in many of the cases rather than deficiency. It is only in recent years that you will find that the sharing of river waters of river Satluj, river Yamuna, that has become a kind of a dispute between Delhi and Punjab. Otherwise, it was never a dispute, and that has also come into existence because of incessant sand mining which has happened. That has made the entire region scarce of water. It has become water scarce. Otherwise, in the Himalayan stretches, if you open up the annals of history, nowhere will you find the evidences of water scarcity to be very prominent. But in the case of the peninsular rivers, because of seasonality of the availability of water, this is always going to be an issue, and that is why you have interstate tribunals which are also set up, or the river dispute tribunals which are also set up. So major tributaries, Kabini, very famous. Here you have a dam as well, water storage dam as well, and it is in fact very well known for its biodiversity, for its wildlife across the region of Kabini. That is where you have the presence of Bandepur Tiger Reserve on one side. That is where you have the presence of Nagarhole, Mudumalai as well. So the easiest place to locate a tiger in the region of Karnataka, if you consider it, Kabini region is one of the easiest place to locate a tiger. It is in fact in the region of Kabini where you had the very elusive black leopard, which was also located. Okay, black panther, which was also located. So Kabini, Bhavani, and Amravati, these are your major tributaries of Kaveri. Okay, then this is your Kaveri river, and then this is the list for the various different rivers, its origin, the end, the various tributaries, and the major cities. Okay, so you have for Ganga, Brahmaputra, Yamuna, Indus, Kaveri, Krishna, Godavari, Narmada. For all of this, you have this list. Rectify it, mug it up, whatever you want, or just look at it for your prelims. Okay. How to overcome dispute of water in peninsular region? This is a question which is being asked by many of the candidates who have even appeared for the Forest Service interviews which have been conducted. So ideally, the answer is not that give this state that much water or give that state that much water. The answer, which should always be futuristic or forward looking in a way, the answer should always be that look, water sharing, first of all, should keep into account the total net availability of water, including the groundwater reserve, right? First of all. Secondly, the aim should always be to conserve water. So in the local area, in the micro level, the aim should be rainwater harvesting. That will provide a solution to all the water sharing disputes. Eventually, all these rivers, they drain into excess into the region of Bay of Bengal, isn't it? Or Arabian Sea. So the solution is never to give that state too much or this state less. It is always to conserve water in your own area. And that will always be a long-lasting solution. Okay? Now, no, you don't have to learn the left or the right bank tributary, but basically you should have the idea of the major tributaries. Okay? Right? So after this, we come to the inland rivers and the interlinking of rivers, but we'll do that after a break. So let's take a break and we'll be back in 15 minutes. Shruti, no. You don't have one tributary for two rivers. So it needs to have an origin, and the destination is one of the rivers. It cannot be a kind of interlinking canal. Okay, let's take a break and let's be back. A confirmation for the audio, please, guys, if you're able to hear me out perfectly. Thank you. So now we take a look at the inland river systems. Now, when we say inland rivers, what does that mean? That basically ends up representing a condition where the rivers, they don't particularly drain into the region of any of the larger seas or oceans, but they end up dissipating within the territorial area itself. So those are referred to as inland rivers. So here we take the case of, in our country, we have few inland rivers. We have River Ghaggar, which is also considered as an inland river, and we have River Luni in particular. River Luni is considered to be an inland river. River Luni originates in the region of Pushkar in the Ajmer district along the Aravalli ranges, and then it drains, it moves southwards before disappearing in the region of Rann of Kutch. So River Luni, when we talk about it, no, Ghaggar and Ghagra, they are different. So River Luni originates near Pushkar, which lies in the Ajmer district in the Aravalli hills and the Aravallis. And basically, in the initial portion or the initial stretch of the river, you'll find that the flow of water is very significant. But in the lower stretches, that is where the flow is very less. So in this portion, flow is very less. Now, if the flow of water is very less and the conditions are oppressive in terms of heat, what phenomena will you experience in this condition? You will experience significant amount of evaporation. So due to this, you have significant evaporation. And when evaporation is very high, then what happens to the water condition? Whenever we have in any water system, if the evaporation level is very high, then water turns saline. So makes the water saline. So that is why River Luni is particularly important in the sense, or particularly peculiar in the sense, that in the upper course or in the upper regions or upper course, it has got fresh water which flows, and in the lower course, we have saline water. Yes, Abhishek, that is correct. So that is an example of the inland river system. Okay. So all these river systems that we have talked about, just take a look at the major tributaries, right? When I say take a look at the major tributaries, does not necessarily mean that you start learning each one of them. Even if you have a broader clue, for example, Sankosh will be in the case of Brahmaputra, Indravati in the case of Godavari. Even if you have that broader amount of outlook, you will be able to solve the MCQs which are formed from this area. So always advisable to have that brief amount of idea from these rivers, because generally every 2 years you'll find one question appearing in the prelims, and it is an easy question. If you know this region, then it is a very easy question. We have discussed each of the rivers in significant detail when it comes to their tributaries, the water systems, etc. Just follow that approach. Now, then we come to the interlinking of rivers. So what is the aspect of it? What do we mean when we talk about interlinking of rivers? So this is a process through which you have rivers which have excess water, which can lead to floods and occurrence of floods in certain areas, and you also have deficiency of water experienced in certain other regions. So there is, or the effort is to transfer the excess water from a water surplus region to a water deficient region. Because in a country like India, we experience this unique phenomena where simultaneously a region experiences floods, and maybe within a couple of months that region can experience droughts as well. Or while there are floods happening in an area, other regions can experience very dry conditions, water scarcity conditions. So that is where the idea of interlinking of rivers was mooted way back in 1920 by the British officials, that is Sir Arthur Cotton. He basically talked about the aspect of interlinking, and he talked about this concept in the region of Madras presidency now, or the Madras province by that point of time. So that is where this idea was first mooted. Now, the government of India, after independence, formed various commissions to seek the viability of interlinking of rivers. But then, over a period of time, this matter was put into cold storage. It was then at the turn of the century, that is around 2000, when there again this particular issue was taken up very seriously. And after that, again, you had a significant consideration of the fact that whether you need to carry out this process of interlinking or not. And again, recently, this issue has gained momentum. You have had certain river systems such as Ken Betwa interlinking, Kosi Mechi interlinking, Partapi Narmada interlinking. So all these various projects of interlinking have picked up momentum in recent times. So when we talk about interlinking, one should be aware of the benefits and the drawbacks associated with interlinking of rivers. Okay? You should be aware of the benefits, advantages, and the drawbacks. So let us consider the advantages and also the drawbacks. So when we talk about the advantages first, or here, if we talk about both of them, but first we will consider the advantages here. So when we talk about it, for example, in this case, what is the major advantage? It can solve the problem of, or the twin problems of floods and droughts occurring at the same time. So can cater to twin problems of floods and droughts. Right? So in areas which are generally experiencing deficiency of water, for example, the Bundelkhand region, which is spread across both the region of Uttar Pradesh as well as Madhya Pradesh. Bundelkhand is very well known for scarcity of water, due to which historically there have been a lot of crop failures which have happened in that area, as a result of which the farmers in that region, they are forced to migrate and work as landless and migrant laborers in other parts of the country. So in those areas, in those water scarce conditions, the availability of this renewed amount of water supply can also augment agriculture. So can increase agricultural output. In a country where almost 60% of the farmlands, they don't have an assured source of irrigation, this interlinking, which will supply water from a surplus region to a region of deficiency through the presence of a canal system. Right. So through the movement or the presence of a canal, as the water is supplied from a region of a surplus to a region of a deficiency, so that can always increase the irrigated area, increases the irrigation. Right? Then it can also, because when you transfer that water from one region to another, you will be building multiple storage structures, multiple lift structures, because it is not as if you simply dig up the land and water will continue to flow. Water flows at different elevations in different parts of the country, so you need to provide a kind of a lift in certain areas, you need to have storage structures in certain areas. So it will also provide us with a condition of water security for drinking purposes, for domestic purposes, etc. So that is something which will be provided. Then after that, electricity generation through the hydroelectric projects which will be constructed in the process. So electricity generation. Right? That can also be done. Then across these channels and canals which will be constructed, you will also have the scope of increased pisciculture or aquaculture which can take place. So increased pisciculture or aquaculture. So increase in the amount of income from the fisheries for the farmers as well. Now these canals will also provide a pathway for navigation. So also increases the navigable stretches. Increases the navigable stretches. Okay. So these are your various advantages. Now what about the drawbacks? Very costly. Huge cost involved. As per the latest estimates, it is close to around $183 billion. That is the huge amount of cost which will be involved in implementing this program. So interlinking of rivers has been divided into various subset of programs. You have the Himalayan rivers, the Himalayan component of interlinking, you have the peninsular component of interlinking, and you basically also have a component where eventually the Himalayan and the peninsular rivers, they are also sought to be interlinked. So the huge cost involved, then the construction of canals and channels will also lead to submergence. Submergence of many areas, including the areas of biodiversity as well, including protected areas. And when you have that kind of a submergence of many regions, so always you will have the problem of resettlement and rehabilitation as well. People need to be settled to different places. They need to be provided compensation. So the issue of resettlement and rehabilitation. Resettlement and rehabilitation. That will also be a major problem or a major issue associated with this. Then also, as is claimed or as is postulated, this can also bring about a disturbance in the natural flow of the river because water will be diverted. Can influence the natural flow. And when the natural flow is disturbed, that in a way disturbs the creation of the floodplains, that disturbs the depositions which happen, that disturbs the aquatic life as well. So will disturb the aquatic life. life is disturbed. Also, you have the condition where floodplains and their fertility is impacted. Okay? These are the various drawbacks. Now, this is a question that UPSC has asked many times, both in the optional as well as in general studies in the mains exam. So this is very important for your mains. Very important for mains. Now, all of you, you are individuals with your own independent thinking. So you are free to draw your own conclusion, whether that is advantageous or whether it is disadvantageous. But you should have the ability to show both the sides of the picture, and you should also have the ability when you are writing a conclusion. So you should be convinced at your end that if interlinking should happen, why? If no, why? That is where the interview panel will also grill you. That is the kind of an aptitude and an attitude that interview panel wants to take a look at it. That whether that individual has got his or her own opinion, or whether whatever has been read in the book, only that is basically repeated. So have your own opinion, but justify it. And when you are writing a mains answer, always highlight both the ends, and eventually while you are writing the way forward or conclusion, try to highlight the fact that interlinking of rivers is not the final solution. Even after that, unless and until we start conserving water in the local region at the micro level, including rainwater harvesting and so on, unless and until that happens and that takes place, the impact will not be very sufficient. So that is why always when you are writing the mains answer, write a kind of a way forward that despite all the advantages and disadvantages, the future lies in recreating or rejuvenating each of the river channels on its own, and also ensuring water sufficiency and security in all of these areas. Other than that, you can take any side that you want. Okay? Right? And people's emotions are also hurt because of interlinking. Yes, Sahyadri. So it can influence the cultural and traditional beliefs as well. So that is also a point. Okay. Now, here, this is the various different component proposed for interlinking. As you can see, it has got a Himalayan component. It has also got a peninsular component. And eventually, you have a component which seeks to join the Himalayan and the peninsular rivers as well. So right now, if you take a look at it, the region of this one, that is Par Tapi Narmada interlinking, Ken Betwa interlinking, as well as the Kosi Mechi interlinking. These three are being worked upon very significantly. You also had the work which was being carried out across the region of Godavari, Krishna, Pennar, Kaveri, that interconnect, and it was launched by the state governments involved. But obviously, state governments, they abandoned this plan because they wanted the center to pay all the money, and center said that if you have announced a plan, you should have thought about the funding before announcing the plan as well. So that is where majority of these interlinking in the region around Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri, they are facing a roadblock in terms of funding. The program or the plan of interlinking which has been or which is being implemented with one of the fastest speeds is the Ken Betwa link project. While this has been mooted for a very long time, it received cabinet approval only in around 2014. Now the aim of it is to provide water to the water scarce area of Bundelkhand, to assuage or remove the problem of water scarcity in the region of Bundelkhand, so that farming can be carried out, so that migration can be prevented. If agriculture is thriving in a region, the economy also tends to boom in that local environment. Having said that, this particular Ken Betwa interlink project has gone through multiple different obstacles, multiple different hurdles, where you have many protests which have been organized, due to which this interlinking project has also slowed down quite significantly. And here, nowadays, the problem is that whether it will be completed in the near future or not. Now, here, the impact is also to be felt in the Panna Biosphere Reserve, or the Panna Protected Region, where significant amount of portion of that Panna Reserve is going to be submerged as the result of this interlinking. Okay, so that is basically the aspect of interlinking. Where will river drain? Vaibhav, river will drain where it is draining, but let's say it is draining into Bay of Bengal. Here again, another river is draining into Bay of Bengal. But you form that channel so that there is a water from water surplus to a water deficient channel that tends to flow. Okay. Will the river dispute news really matter for the examination? Yes, the latest ones, you should keep a track of it. So this is a site, guys, where you will get the idea of the large dams. That is indiawris.gov.in. So here you will get basically a detailed idea about the interlinking projects, the rivers. So in this website, you will get a kind of rivers, tributaries, interlinking, storage structures, dams. So all of this you will get in that link. So I would suggest to you, visit this for your prelims preparation. Okay, use this for your prelims preparation, and that will be very, very helpful for you guys. And please don't start taking out printouts for these, because this is going to be very lengthy. If you like taking printouts, fair enough, you can get that satisfaction as well. But then overall, use this website frequently so that you get that repetition in your brain, and that is going to stay for a longer period of time. Okay, so then we come to the portion of forests. Now, when we talk about forests, again, this is going to be relevant both for your prelims as well as for your mains exam. Now, in prelims, you generally get questions for types of forests, you also get the conditions required for these forests, and also type of plants or trees that you find in these. And in the mains, you get questions for state of forest report. Okay, the latest one. So whenever you are appearing for the examination, look at the latest state of forest report 2023. That is, by the end of this year, you will get another state of forest report. So always look at the latest one. I will tell you what is it that you have to absolutely cater for or look into this particular forest report, how you have to approach it. That is something we'll talk about. Okay. Now, when we talk about the types of forests, so here I would suggest to you, read this particular portion after you have read the rainfall distribution in the country. Because once you are aware about the amount of rainfall received in an area, that makes it very easy for you to be able to decipher what kind of a forest will you find to be present in that area. Okay, so always take a look at this after you have studied the portion of climate, Indian climate, India's monsoon and monsoonal rainfall and the rainfall distribution. Okay, so when we talk about the types of forests that you find in the country, so you have tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, you have deciduous forest, thorn forest, montane forest found in mountainous areas, and littoral and swamp forest that is generally found across the beaches, across intertidal zones, and also across inland lakes in those areas. So these tend to grow in areas where rainfall is greater than 200 centimeter. Okay, so in the case of evergreen, when the rainfall is around and above 220 to 250 centimeter per year, that is where you will find them. This is 200 centimeter per year. Okay, tropical deciduous in itself is further subdivided into the moist deciduous, and also dry deciduous. Addition, temperature, height can also decide type of forest. Altitude, you mean? Yes, that is why we have montane forests. That is true. So here, and basically, if you take a look at the type of rainfall, the amount of rainfall, that is also largely a subtype or a kind of something which is subdependent on the amount of rainfall as well. Moist deciduous, you find in areas where rainfall is greater than or between 100 to 200 centimeter per year. Average, if it is around 140 centimeter, that is where you will find that. Then dry deciduous, rainfall around 70 centimeter to 100 centimeter per year. Okay, then tropical thorn forest, when we talk about, that is something which is found in areas where the rainfall is around 40 centimeter to 70 centimeter per year. Montane forest, the type of forest that you find in mountainous regions, in the mountains. Okay, and littoral and swamp forest, the types of trees and forests that you find in the beaches, coastal area. Because there the conditions are different. You have the presence of saline water, which is experienced in many of the cases. Coastal regions, across inland lakes. Yes, Shivam, inland lakes. Okay, so in those areas, you have the littoral and swamp forests, which are in existence. Example, mangroves. Mangroves will come under this category. Example, mangroves. Okay, so let us take a look at each one of them. And here, that is why if you take a note of these maps, one of them on the left hand side, they indicate the type of forest, and the other one describes the amount of rainfall. You'll find a significant amount of similarity. Wherever the rainfall is very high, observe in these areas and this area, you'll find evergreen and semi-evergreen forests. And in majority of the regions where the rainfall is moderate, you'll find deciduous forest. So which is the forest which is most dominant across the country? It is always going to be deciduous forest. Now, tropical evergreen forest typically will be observed in the regions where we have very high rainfall. Now in India, in which regions do we have very high rainfall? Western portion of Western Ghats, northeastern states, Andaman Nicobar Islands. So in those areas, you have very high rainfall. And it is tropical. So the temperature required should be on an average higher than around 22 degrees Celsius throughout the year on an average. That is where you will find these kinds of forests as well. So basically, western slope of Western Ghats, hills of northeastern region, and also the Andaman Nicobar Islands, an annual precipitation of roughly over 220 centimeter, and mean annual temperature above 22 degrees Celsius that is where you find evergreen forest. The examples of trees: rosewood, mahogany, any, ebony, etc. Now here again, the various tree species that we are going to look at. Again, we are normal individuals with normal brain capacity, so it will be absolutely impractical for us to think about it that I have read it twice, but I'm unable to learn this. That is how bad this particular point is. Nothing comes to your mind in 2 readings. Okay, only negative marks come into your mind only after 2 readings. You will commit a lot of mistakes. So repeat it 4 to 5 times, the examples of this, then it will stick somewhere at the back of your mind. Okay, now here when we have the semi-evergreen forest, so these are found in areas which are receiving rainfall around 200 centimeter. So they are found in less rainy areas and less rainy parts of Western Ghats, northeastern region, and also in Andaman Nicobar. So white cedar, hollow and kale, they are the examples of the semi-evergreen. Obviously, the density of trees will be slightly lesser as compared to evergreen. You will have slightly greater availability of spaces in between the trees as well. And here you will find significant amount of vegetation to be found on the forest floor. In the case of evergreen forest, we don't find vegetation on the forest floor. Why? Why do you think in the case of evergreen forest we don't find vegetation on the forest floor? What do you think can be the reason for it? Beautiful. It is because there is no availability of sunlight at the bottom of it, because the dense vegetation blocks all the sunlight which does not reach to the bottom. So a lack of sunlight means it is devoid of vegetation. Jimmy, I hope it is not an AI that I am asking question. Jimmy, we can only wish to be as intelligent as an artificial intelligence. So let me assure you, you are not asking a question to AI, you are asking questions to mere mortals here. Okay, so sorry to disappoint you in that case. So then we come to the tropical deciduous forests. Deciduous forests are also what is referred to as a monsoon forest. Now, what do we refer to as a deciduous forest? These are the types of forests which basically shed their leaves during the dry season or during the harsh conditions. Why? In order to conserve water. That is where they shed their leaves. So the entire forest will appear very dry during the drier condition. So this is basically the forest or the trees shed their leaves during the dry season. And again, when the monsoon rains come over, so during these conditions, the forest will appear as very dry. But again, as the monsoon rains come in, everything will start growing back. And it will give you an appearance of lush green dense vegetation again. But the type of trees, they vary, and the density of the trees and the vegetation also varies depending upon the amount of rainfall which is received in different parts. So for example, the deciduous forest overall, they are to be found in the regions spreading between the rainfall reception of 70 centimeter to an area receiving rainfall even as high as 200 centimeter. And here it is divided into moist deciduous and dry deciduous. So overall, deciduous is the most widespread forest that you find across the country. It is the most dominant forest type that you find to be present across the country. So if we take a look at the moist deciduous forest, so generally rainfall between 100 to 200 centimeter is where you find the presence of these forests. Where do you find this much amount of rainfall? So the eastern states along the foothills of Himalayas, that is the northern part of Bihar, northern part of West Bengal, the northern part of Assam floodplains, eastern slope of the Western Ghats also, Andaman Nicobar, parts of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha. In those areas, you will find the presence of deciduous, moist deciduous. The species of trees: teak, sal, sisam, hurra, mahua, amla, sandalwood. All of these are examples. So you can always recall it or remember it by understanding that the commercial trees that you generally use for your furniture making processes, they are to be found in this region of moist deciduous. Okay. Now, then after that, dry deciduous forest. Yes, Abhishek, in that portion also you will find it. Dry deciduous forest, significantly lesser density of trees. So rainfall between 70 to 100 centimeter, and the regions when we talk about it, so predominantly across the northern plains, across the peninsular part of the country as well, because predominantly that is the average rainfall observed in plains of Uttar Pradesh, plains of Bihar, higher rainfall regions in peninsular plateau, and some parts of northern Indian plains which are receiving lesser rainfall. Okay, here you will find tendu leaves, the dried tendu leaves. They are used for rolling tobacco in between them, and they are used for manufacturing of bidis, right? The local cigarettes that you have. So that is where the tendu leaves are used, and significantly this is a major profession amongst the rural households and certain remote rural areas, in the case of Telangana, in the case of eastern part of Maharashtra as well. Now, red sanders, palas, amaltas, bale, khair, axlewood, all of these are examples of dry deciduous. Red sanders always in news. Why? Because of significant amount of smuggling activities, where they are smuggled into the region of eastern part of Asia, and there this particular type of wood is used for making of acoustic equipments, making of furniture, and also you have other medicinal purposes of red sanders as well. And yes, also because of the aspect of the movie which has been made, which has captured the popular imagination. So that is when most of the people, even though they don't know any other tree names, at least they know the name of red sander. So that is basically your dry deciduous forest type. Now, yes, Nitesh, correct. So then we have the regions of even lesser amount of rainfall, that is tropical thorn forest. Here the rainfall is less than 50 centimeter. Now regions where you find them: semi-arid areas of southwest Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and even parts of Uttar Pradesh in the region of Bundelkhand. Because here the amount of rainfall received is very less. And when the amount of rainfall received is very less, you will have thorny forest. So the density of trees will be even further reduced. Observe, ideally, in the region of Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, etc., the monsoon reaches at the end and withdraws earliest. So these are the areas where you see very little amount of rainfall, very scarce amount of rainfall. So these are the areas thorn forests grow. But what kind of crops do we grow there? The types of crops which require very high amount of rainfall. For example, rice, sugarcane. So obviously, there is a mismatch. And this is what is an ideal example of unsustainable agriculture. Okay? Now, babool, bear, wild date palm, khair, neem, khejri, palas, these are the examples of thorn forests. Okay? Yes, parts of Telangana also. True. All the drier areas, some parts of eastern Maharashtra also, there also you'll find it. Okay? Right? Then we come across montane forests. Montane forest means the forests which are observed in the mountainous areas. Now, in the mountainous areas, as you move higher up the slope, the temperature varies, isn't it? There's a variation in temperature. And also, there will be variation in the amount of rainfall. That will also end up varying. Amount of rainfall. So basically, generally you will find that at the lower reaches, at the foothills, the amount of rainfall received will be very high. The temperature will also be higher. So in these areas, you will find tropical kind of vegetation which has got higher rainfall. So in certain areas, for example, in the northeastern stretches, you can also find evergreen tropical trees here. Then as you move higher up, the temperature reduces. So you find temperate forest in that area. Further higher up that you go, you end up finding coniferous forest, pines, right, cheer pine, etc., conifers. Then further higher up that you go, you find grasses, the presence of grasslands, because beyond a particular height you won't observe the growth of trees. And then beyond that, if you further go higher up, you will find a kind of a tundra vegetation, that is the presence of mosses and lichens. So that is how at the base you'll find tropical, then temperate, then beyond that conifers, then grasses, then eventually tundra. Now in India, we have mountains in the north and we have hill systems in the south as well. But overall, the average annual temperature is higher in the case of the southern hill ranges. So the type of forest that you find in the part of the peninsular India, the mountainous regions and the hilly regions of southern India, they are slightly different from the kind of vegetation that you find in the northern hills and mountains. So let us take a look at it. So here, basically, varied successive vegetation from tropical to tundra, which changes with the altitude. At the foothills of Himalayas, you might find deciduous forest in certain regions, moist deciduous in most of the areas. So foothills of Himalayas, mostly you will find moist deciduous. Moist deciduous. Then as you move slightly from 1 to 2 kilometers above the sea surface, you'll find wet temperate type of forest because the temperature lowers down. Then in the hill ranges of northeastern India, hilly areas of northern West Bengal and portions of Uttarakhand, you might even find evergreen broadleaf. Why? Because of very high amount of rainfall, very high amount of rain. Eucalyptus is not an indigenous species of trees, tree, Mandeep. Eucalyptus is not an indigenous local variety of tree. Okay. Very high amount of rainfall. Okay. So here you will find trees such as oak and chestnut. They are very, very predominant. Then higher up that you go, you'll find cheer pine, chinar, deodar, walnut. This is your deodar tree, the image that you see. This is your deodar, significantly used for making of furnitures, very costly furnitures out of deodar. And otherwise, cheer pine and chinar, they also end up secreting some amount of oil, which is used in states such as Sikkim for the manufacturing of biofuels as well. So that is where cheer pine also finds its usage. But it is that secretion of oil which also significantly spreads forest fires at an incredibly fast rate. So cheer pine can be used for manufacture of biofuels, but can also be one of those tree types which spreads the forest fire at a very exponential rate. Okay? Right? Is this clear? Good. Now, then further higher up that you go, you won't find the presence of trees anymore. Temperate grasslands are present, right? And that is what is utilized as pastures even at greater heights. Yesterday, we took a look at one of these grasslands which is found in the region of Himalayas at an altitude of 3,000 to 4,000 meters. What is the name of those grasslands? Very good. Suhail, Avni, Pranay, very good. Vaishna also, all of you. It was bugyals, right? Yesterday we studied about bugyals, the temporary grasslands which are created during the summer months, which are used for transhumanes. Okay, so these nitty-gritties, if you are able to interconnect, guys, trust me, many of the prelims questions you will be able to solve by logic, while rest of the candidates, they will be worrying about the fact that where I have read this content or I have never come across this content. Your ability to interrelate and interconnect the various topics, that is something which is going to carry you through. So this approach that few of you are following, please carry it on, and carry it on even after the classes are over, not only till these classes are present. Okay, then when we go to the higher latitude, that is where you have the presence of tundra vegetation. Tundra vegetation, basically only during certain conditions you have the presence of mosses and lichens, and these are the regions generally covered in snow and ice. In most of the parts of the year, this is covered in snow and ice. Only during the summer conditions you'll find the presence of mosses and lichens. Okay, now when we talk about the southern mountain forests, in this case, what can we draw as a conclusion here? Here, basically, average annual temperature is higher. Average annual temperature is higher. Right? And also, in general, some portions will receive greater amount of availability of rainfall, but that cannot be said to be true in all the areas, right? So rainfall more or less is variable, but here height is less. Height or altitude is less. Isn't it? This can be a characteristic. Now, if the average annual temperature is also higher and the height is also comparatively less, will you find the presence of, let's say, tundra at all? Absolutely not. Will you find the presence of alpine pastures or grasslands that we talked about in the case of Himalayas? No, absolutely not. So that is the kind of a general conclusion that you can draw from this area. And in fact, let me tell you, or let me help you more in this case. In this case, you just need to be aware of one particular term, generally from the purpose of the examination, that is the sholas. Sholas are always repeatedly asked in the examination, and it is asked in a generic way that what are sholas? Types of tribes, type of forest, type of grassland, etc. So we'll come to that. So here in peninsular India, the forest types are found in Western Ghats, Vindhyas and Nilgiris predominantly, but not to say only in these areas. After all, even in the region of Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh, you have the region of Amarkantak. There also you will find some amount of these forest types. In the region of Odisha, you have the Garjat ranges. There also you will find some of the forest of these types. You have the Maikal ranges, etc. So there also you'll find the presence of these forest types. So basically, you'll find the presence of these forest types in different areas, but predominantly it is to be found in these major regions. Okay? Now, when we talk about it, so vegetation is temperate in the higher reaches at greater altitude and subtropical in the lower reaches of the Western Ghats, especially Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Very rich in biodiversity. These areas, the amount of biodiversity that they have, there are very few areas in the world which have an equivalent amount of biodiversity, because the forests, they are very, very dense. So all kinds of biodiversity you will be able to find in this region. Okay, the wet temperate evergreen forests are referred to as sholas in the Nilgiri, Anamalai and the Palni hills. Sholas basically is derived from the Tamil term sholai. That is where it has been derived from. Species of trees magnolia, laurel, cinchona, and wattle. That is basically the portion of the montane forests. Okay. Now, littoral and swamp forests. Where do you find them? Where do you find the littoral and swamp forests in this case? So here you will find them across the coastal areas. Very good. Coastal regions. Sholas basically, Amit, they are wet temperate evergreen forests. So they indicate an evergreen characteristic, and these also are present where the temperature is slightly lower at a greater altitude as compared to the base of these hills. Okay. So coastal regions spreading all the way from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, then you have Tamil Nadu, then you have Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, especially around the region of Chilika, Bhitarkanika, in those areas, then West Bengal. In all these areas, you'll find significant amount of littoral and swamp forest. Then along with that, inland lakes, right? Inland lakes, where you have the larger inland lakes, there also you'll find littoral and swamp forest. So they do not necessarily mean the kind of trees that grow in salt water, but across the coastal areas, they will typically be found in the region where you have the saline water which is present. So mangroves are the ones that you will find in the case of coastal region. Is the audio issue still persistent? Are you still finding the audio issues, guys? No. So Vikas, kindly refresh it. There is no audio issue. If there is an issue with the voice, Vikas, that is a different problem. But I don't think there is an audio issue. So mangroves is a different, mangroves is something that you find in the coastal areas. Now here, also include the island territories, that is across the islands. That is Andaman Nicobar as well as Lakshadweep. Andaman Nicobar and also in the case of Lakshadweep. So amongst the coastal regions, you will have them to be found across the beaches, intertidal zones, that is the region where between the low tide line and the high tide line, that is the intertidal zone. Intertidal zone. Across the deltas, so the deltaic stretches created by the, for example, in Sundarbans, then the deltas created by Mahanadi, deltas created by Godavari, delta created by Krishna, Kaveri. So across the deltas, then across the estuaries also. Now, by the way, another question which was asked in a test series, and many of you got it wrong, or many of those who attempted the test series, they got it wrong. If I tell you a statement, estuaries are found only across the western coast of India, how many of you feel this is a correct statement? Estuaries are to be found only in the west coast of India. Good. All of you agree to it that it is incorrect. Whenever you have these kinds of statements, look at the term only. And again, another question I will give you. Where do you think estuaries are more? Across the eastern coastline or across the western coastline? What do you think? This is where it gets interesting. Okay. So in earlier one, it was unanimous. And this one, we have a split verdict. So whenever that question is asked, apply your logic. In general, where do you think majority of the rivers drain? Across the west coast or across the east coast? Always across the east. So the probability of formation of estuaries will be greater where more number of rivers drain, isn't it? So you will always have across the eastern coastline, many of the rivers, they are able to form estuaries as well. So in number, in absolute number, the number of estuaries will be greater in the region of eastern coast. However, in the western coast, you will only have estuaries, very limited delta formation, almost no delta formation. In the east coast, you will have the presence of both of them. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is where the candidates, they committed mistake. Generally, because the candidates, they keep on studying about the fact that you have in the western coast estuary formation rather than the deltaic formation. So most of the candidates, they think that estuaries will be dominant only across the western coast, but that is not the case. The presence of certain geophysical characteristics such as narrow continental shelf allows the seawater to get inland in many of the areas and create an estuary across the eastern coastline also. So these are few of the factual type of questions. You can absolutely get it incorrect. 98% of the candidates will get it incorrect, but better to lie in that 2%. Okay. Now, they can be classified into beach forest, tidal forest, and freshwater swamp forests, generally found across the inland lakes. Example of these is mangroves. Example, mangroves. Mangroves, the type of adaptation, their functionality, their utility, the threats faced by mangroves, you will cover in the portion of environment and ecology in significant detail. And again, I would urge all of you, those of you who have not covered the portion of environment and ecology here till now, few of you I see you have covered it. Always the portions that you have studied till now, including the rainfall, temperature, how do they influence the local conditions, how do they influence the vegetation. If you just keep a track of these basic things, you will never need to approach environment as a separate subject. It will just be a kind of an extension of geography itself. Okay, so you will be able to make your task much easier. The preparation process will be much more smoother. Revision will be much better and much faster as well. Eventually, if you are able to form a kind of an interlinkage between the geographical portion and the environmental portion. So whenever you approach that subject, at whatever point of time in your life, you will have to approach that subject. Never forget the basics that you have studied here. Otherwise, if you refer to them in silos, your answer will not be sufficient enough. Your approach will be isolated, and that subject will appear to be very humongous. Always try to form a kind of an interlinkage, that if I know the temperature of a region, if I know the rainfall of a region, there is no reason why I cannot predict the type of vegetation. I might get wrong in a bit that in place of dry deciduous, I might think it is moist deciduous. That kind of an error can happen. But I will never confuse an area which receives 200 centimeter of or 150 centimeter of rainfall. I will never confuse that in that area you have thorny forest. And how will this help you? This will help you to understand that if you have dense vegetation in an area, obviously you will not find camels in those regions. If you have thorn forest in an area, obviously you will have different kind of wildlife as well. So the entire concept of that subject will also be solved just by this approach that you develop. That is something that I would urge you whenever you pick up that subject. Okay. Then we come to the portion of especially the biodiversity and climate change. Absolutely, yes. Correct, Nitesh. So then we come to the status of forest report in India, relevant for your mains exam in general. Yes, Aman, that is true. So in the mains, not across canals, but generally across larger lakes. So this is a question which is asked by UPSC every time a new report is released. Status of Forest Report of India. Now, this is basically a report which has been initiated or has been in inception since 1987. And this survey is carried out every 2 years. So it is a biennial exercise. That is, every 2 years it is calculated. It is biennial. So India State of Forest Report is published by the Forest Survey of India, which has been mandated to assess the forest and tree cover. Now 17 assessments have been completed, and the State of Forest Report 2021 is the 17th report in the series. All of you who are going to appear for the examination next year, that is 2024, you should wait for the 18th report, that is the 2023 report, which will be generated. That is something which is going to be helpful for you. Okay, all of you who are going to appear for 2025, wait for that report as well. So the latest report, it will be available on the ministry website, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It is going to be available, right? So refer to the latest report here. Now, how is it that you think that forest survey is done? So basically, it is a combination of twin processes. First of all, you observe that region from satellite. So satellite study is done. So when you study that region from satellite, you take a look at the broader vegetation types that you get a glimpse of, right? You get an area where it is densely vegetated, less vegetated, etc. Then you carry out a ground-based survey with the help of the forest officials. They verify the study which has been done with the satellites. Now, in this case, when you take a look at the satellite, do you think you will be able to study the root system of the trees or the forest? No. You are able to study the density of vegetation. How do you study the density of vegetation? By looking at the canopy of the tree. What is a canopy? So, Nitesh, for you, I would suggest 2023 report will be sufficient. So when you have a tree here, this is what is referred to as the canopy. So if you take a view from above, basically, you will only be able to look at the canopy cover. So if in a designated region, the canopy cover is higher, you will always get an idea about the density of vegetation. So based upon the density, it is classified, right? It is classified into very dense, moderately dense, open forest, scrub land, and so on. Okay, so that is basically the classification, how it is done. This is the example of the reference of Forest and Tree Cover Report of 2019. I'm just giving you an idea to indicate to you that how it appears, how the report appears to look like. So you have very dense forest representing only 3% of the land area, moderately dense forest representing 9.3% of the land area, open forest 9.26%, overall total forest cover is 21.67%, right? And then you have the tree cover as well as 2.89% of the geographical area, and total forest and tree cover is 24.56% as per 2019. As per the 2021 report, this has increased to 24.62%. That is the increase which has been observed. Okay? Weber, is it correct that only USA is the country in the world that has got every type of vegetation and climate? No, even in India you find that. It is different that you find it in different latitudes, different altitudes, but you find it. Okay? So, I will give you the data of the 2021 report as well. But before that, understand the classification which is done for the very dense, moderately dense, open forest and scrubland. So here, when we talk about very dense forest, these are the areas where the density of the canopy cover or the density of the trees is more than 70%. If it lies between 40 to 70%, that comes under moderately dense category. If you have the presence bit of forest between 10 to 40%, that comes in the open forest category, right? It has got a lot of open spaces. And if you come across a canopy density of less than 10%, so this is considered as a scrubland, generally found in the region of Haryana, western UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, parts of Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh as well, parts of Telangana as well, parts of Vidarbha region as well. There you will find this. Okay. Now here you saw something referred to as tree cover, and you had a forest cover as well. What is the difference between the two? So basically, if in any area, in any particular city, when we talk about it, any particular city, any particular region, if you have, let's say, the presence of trees in a particular region, can we consider it as a forest? No. For example, the city of Bangalore is referred to as a garden city. Now, all these gardens have many trees. Can we consider them as a forest? Absolutely not. So, if you have the density of the trees more than or greater than 1 hectare region is occupied by that vegetation, then it is sometimes regarded as forest land. Okay? So that is basically the difference between tree cover and the forest cover. So this is as per the report of 2021 rather. In terms of area, the list of top 5 states in terms of largest forest area, you have, in terms of the aerial coverage, you have basically Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, then Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Maharashtra. Okay, so that is the area which has the list of top 5 aerial coverage. Okay, then the percentage of the area which is occupied by forest. This is different from the total aerial coverage. The percentage within a state which is occupied by forest. You have Mizoram, which has 85%, almost 84.5% of the land under forest. Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Manipur, and Nagaland. These are the areas where you have largest percentage of forest cover. And sadly so, this is also the region where you have most of the deforestation which is being carried out. The most active rate of deforestation is being carried out in these particular states as well. And why is that? Extension of agriculture for lumbering activities where timber is collected for all the plywood manufacturing, etc., mining activities, infrastructure building. So that is where these areas, they experience most significant amount of deforestation as well. So this is again few of the details of the forest cover of 2021, the State of Forest Report for 2021. So the total forest and tree cover of the country is 80.9 million hectare, which is 24.62% of the geographical area. As per the National Forest Policy of 1988, we have to take this forest cover to 33% of the geographical area. That is the aim, that is the goal. Currently, we have been increasing it slowly, steadily. So as compared to the assessment of 2019, there has been an increase of almost 2,000 square kilometer. Out of this, increase in the forest cover has been 1,540 square kilometer, and increase in tree cover is almost 721 square kilometer. Now, that is basically since the last assessment. This marks an increase of 0.4%. Forest cover has increased by how much? Tree cover has increased by how much? We have seen 5 states with the largest increase in forest area. These are the various states where the forest area has increased. Just know this much amount of data for the latest report which is coming out. that is more than sufficient, guys. Okay, and understand that gradually mangrove cover has also been increasing. So other highlights, the total mangrove cover in the country has increased by 17 square kilometer. Bamboo forests have also registered an increase of almost 26% between 2019 to 21. Area under very dense forest has also increased by almost 500 square kilometer, which is a very good news. Notably, 17 states and union territories have more than 33% of the area under forest cover. So they have already achieved the target. It is for the rest of the states to catch up in the process. Okay? Right? How to write the answer in the mains examination? Probably in which month the ISFR report will come. ISFR report generally is generated during the later part, November, December. But then in 2021, because of the COVID conditions, this was released much later. In fact, this was released in 2022. That is when you had, because of the COVID conditions. But then generally in the last part of the year, it is something which is released. Okay, right? Should I learn these? Yes, you should learn these. And how to write the answer in mains from this? Basically, when you talk about the type of questions which are asked, that is, examine or analyze the state of forest report of 2019 was the question which was asked in mains directly. Now, once you get that kind of a question, obviously, first of all, in the introduction, write what is the state of forest report, who generates it, what report is 2019, what is the number of report. Then after that, start by writing that this report accounts for the canopy cover, etc., right? And how the classification is done. Make a table of the canopy cover and the type of forest, a small table that will be visually appealing as well. Then after that, write these brief points of the report. In conclusion, while this has indicated an increase overall, there is a lot more to be achieved because the rate of deforestation also has been high. That also you have to highlight where the rate of deforestation has been high in the northeastern states. So all this conclude by saying that it has to reach to 33%. So more afforestation works and the good practices that we have followed, that is something which can be implemented. Right? Now, the question. So in India, which one of the following types of forest is teak a dominant tree species? Karti, every 2 years it is circulated. Nalamala has a mixture of deciduous, generally. Deciduous, moist and dry deciduous. Very good, guys. So most of you have given the correct answer. A, that is tropical moist deciduous forest. Then, which one of the following regions of India has a combination of mangrove forest, evergreen forest, and deciduous forest? Shivam, you have received the answer, right? See, natural forests have decreased means there are many areas where afforestation programs have not attained that much amount of success. So the natural forests have decreased. Afforested areas which have a lesser canopy cover, lesser diversity, they have basically increased. So here the correct answer is D, Andaman Nicobar Island, right? So when we talk about southwestern Bengal, that is where the confusion lies. If you analyze north coastal Andhra Pradesh, you don't find evergreen there. So this is incorrect. Southwestern Bengal, that is the region around Odisha, Jharkhand border that you have. There you will find the presence of deciduous. You won't find evergreen, right? So this is also incorrect. Then basically South Coastal Saurashtra, no evergreen. This is where all of them can be found. Majority of the candidates, they were very confused between this and this one. It was, I guess, asked in 2015 and 16. So that is basically majority of the candidates, they got confused in it. Finally, UPSC released its answer key. The answer is D, and that is the answer. Nitesh, I remember 8-year UPSC PYQ by heart. Very good. That will always help you in the long run. Very good. Now we come to the portion of soil and the associated problems. So in this case, it is relevant for your prelims, mains as well. In prelims, similar to the type of forests, so types of soil and also the regional spread. Regional spread. Where, in which part of the country you find that. And in mains, issues of soil erosion, conservation, degradation, desertification, this is something that you find to be asked in the mains examination. Now, in the case of forest, I had advised you that study that after you have studied the climate, India's climate. In this case, I would advise you study this after you have studied the conditions of India's physiography and also India's rainfall distribution. Not rainfall distribution to that right? So after physiography you have completed, then cover the portion of soil. And generally, if you have attended the sessions and if you have been regular in the sessions, in the portion of physiography, we have gone to the depth, to the detailing that no other book will carry you to. So basically, we have seen the formation of the various physiographic divisions as well. So just follow that approach, more than sufficient to understand the type of soil itself, right? We'll come to it. XY will come to it in the on the day after tomorrow. That is on Friday. We'll discuss the rest of the PYQs as well. Don't worry. So when we say soil, so soil is basically a mixture of rock debris and organic materials which develop on the Earth's surface. It takes millions of years to form soil up to few centimeters in depth. Now, how is it that a soil is created? A soil is generally created as a result of the process of weathering of rocks. Let's suppose you have a large rocky area. It starts getting weathered. So it breaks into smaller parts, smaller pieces, smaller subparts as well. Isn't it? Smaller parts, subpieces, that is what it breaks into. Right? Now they will further break into multiple smaller subportions, right? Eventually you have the formation of the soil. So if we know the characteristic of the rock type to be found in that area, can't we understand the characteristic of the type of soil as well? We can always do that. So that is why I will again tell you, if you have an idea of the type of rocks, where do you get the idea about the type of rocks? That is what we have studied in physiography. Just look at that physiography. Accordingly, you will be able to tell and foretell what kind of the rocks or what kind of soil is present. I will help you understand that with the help of map as well. But the soil is a sum product, formation of soil. Formation is a sum product of weathering of rocks, and also the process of erosion and deposition. Process of erosion and deposition. For example, a river which is coming down the mountain slopes, it will bring sediments and silt along with it. It will deposit it in the floodplains. Now that deposition which is carried by the river, it is what is referred to as the alluvial floodplains we have studied. So you have the alluvial soil. Now will the alluvial soil be fertile or not? What do you think? Will it have fertility ingrained in it or not? Very fertile. So if you know that alluvial soil is fertile, can you also not guess that the alluvial soil will be able to support almost all types of crops? You will be able to come to that conclusion as well, isn't it? Now, here we take a look at the type of the factors which contribute to the formation of soil. So the soil formation is basically contributed by various different types of rocks, or various different types of factors. For example, parent rock or bedrock. Now this gives you an idea about the mineral composition of the soil. This gives an idea about the mineral composition. For example, when we talk about the region of Deccan Traps, the Deccan Traps basically have the flood basaltic lava which has spread. Now, that flood basaltic lava, will you find in the northern Ganga plains? No. So, that flood basaltic lava, when it will disintegrate, it will form a very unique variety of soil. What is that soil type known as? Very good. It is the black soil. There you will find the formation of black soil. Now think about another factor. You have one soil A, which is carried out as a result of sedimentation and as a result of deposition, let's say. And you have a soil type which is B, which is made out of weathering of igneous rocks. Now out of these two, A and B, which will have more organic content or organic nutrient in them? What do you think? A or B? Always it will be the case of A, because whenever you have weathering of igneous rocks, do they have the presence of fossils or organic content in them? Absolutely not. Now, because the igneous rocks are devoid of organic content, they won't have the soil formed, won't have the organic component. Now think about it. For the growth of plants, you do require the presence of organic component. That is what the fertility of the soil is. You do require the presence of organic component. So obviously, plant growth will be more greater in the case of A, sedimentary deposition. So just by understanding the type of rocks, you will also get the ability to decipher what kind of vegetation will you be able to find in that area. When we say fertility of soil is dependent on what? On the type of nutrients, water holding capacity, and the air retention capacity. So, fertility of soil is there problem in audio which is very persistent? Yes and no. No. Okay. It is resolved now? Okay. See, slight amount of noise, that is a component of Digital India in itself. So please don't get disturbed. when you have slight amount of noise. Okay. Right. So when we talk about fertility of soil, this fertility of soil is dependent on what conditions? On the conditions of nutrients which are present, including the organic nutrients, including the macronutrients, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. These are the macronutrients which are very essential. Then moisture retention capacity. So Aman, when it becomes very disturbing, kindly let me know. I'll try to find a solution. Okay. So you have moisture retention capacity. And air holding capacity. Now, when is it or why is it that these are the factors which contribute to the fertility of the soil? Have you ever thought about it? I'm sure all of you would be knowing that this is basically the factors which determine the fertility of the soil. I'm sure most of you would be knowing this. But why is it that we call such kind of a soil to be fertile? Where you have the nutrients available, where you have the moisture retention capacity, the soil type which has got the capacity to hold air between them as well. Why do you think so? It is because when we say a soil is fertile, is when the soil has got the ability to support life systems, including the plant growth, including the ability to support different types of worms, microbiotic components as well. So that is why, and here think about it. Think about it for a brief moment before typing the answer very quickly. Think about it for a brief moment. If I have a soil type A, which has got very fine grains, very small grains, and think about it from your natural experience as well. So you have fine grains. And B, which has got coarser grains, larger grains. Larger grain size. Out of this, which one of them do you think has a lesser capacity to hold the moisture and air in between them? Which of them has got a lesser capacity? Obviously, it is going to be B, because in the case of B, when you pour water, water will immediately percolate, right? Whereas even the air can escape out of that. When you have larger grains, air can easily escape out of that. When the wind blows, it will carry some air along with it. But when you have fine grains, the air will be trapped, the moisture will also be retained. So that is how the type of soil, the fertility of the soil is oftentimes determined by the size of the grains. Finer or smaller the size of the grains, greater or more fertile the soil is. Okay? Then here, mineral composition, organic component, all of these are determined by the parent rock. Example, black soil. Even red and yellow soil, but most of us are not aware of that example, so we'll cover that later. Example, black soil. Then climate. Climate is a very significant factor. How? So the amount of rainfall received, the temperature which is experienced. So under climate, you have rainfall, and you also have the conditions of temperature. Now, both of these will end up determining the grain size, because both of these can alter the rate of weathering, right? So both of these can impact the rate of weathering, Also, the rate at which decomposition is happening, rate of decomposition of organic component which is generally happening, and hence the fertility. Yes, Bharti, that is correct. That is very correct. So this is basically how climate will influence. Then vegetation and other forms of life, that will be able to influence the overall organic component, isn't it? The presence of microbiotic components in the soil, which is very essential in order to instigate and to bring about the growth of the plants. That is very essential. That is controlled and contributed by vegetation and the different forms of life which are available. Then time taken for formation of the soil. Now, for the formation of fine grains of soil, do you think it will take lesser amount of time, or do you think it will consume greater amount of time for formation of fine grains? What do you think? Obviously, more time is needed, because you need to have greater amount of disintegration, greater amount of weathering. So time consumed influences the size of grains or granules. That influences fertility. Pranay, vegetation and other forms of life, they influence the organic component present in the soil and the biological functionalities which are carried out in the soil. Influences fertility. Greater the amount taken for the formation of the soil, more fertile is the soil. Actions of running water, wind, and glaciers, they are indicators of the amount of erosion or deposition that are carried out. Yes, absolutely yes, Vaibhav. Generally, tropical areas will experience greater amount of weathering as compared to temperate regions. Amount of erosion, deposition, that is controlled by this. So that is why across the river valleys, you will find the presence of fertile, fine-grained sedimentary deposits which have been brought by these rivers. Action of decomposers, the rate of decomposition as well, that contributes to the amount of organic component which you find in the soil. And then the other chemical and organic changes which do take place over a period of time, all of that contributes significantly to the type of soil that we have, the fertility of the soil that we have. Okay? So I hope this is a portion which is understood, and tomorrow we'll basically cover the rest of the portion, the type of the soil that we have, layers of soil, basically the soil profiling that you consider. So the finest layer is present at the top, obviously, because that is the one which has been weathered significantly. As you go at the lower portion, the soil granules, they become larger and larger, and then eventually you have the parent rock which has formed this as a result of disintegration. Okay, now the highest amount of organic component will be present in the top layer, and it will reduce, the fertility tends to reduce, along with the moisture holding capacity, the water retention capacity, the air retention capacity, all of that continues to reduce as we move to lower layers. Okay, so that is where we'll end the session today. Tomorrow we'll initiate the rest of the discussion, and we will move into the portion of agriculture. Okay, we will cover the portion of Indian agriculture, the aspect of sustainability in agriculture, organic farming, the various important crops. That is something we'll cover tomorrow. Shivam, considering only 3 classes are left, how much is still remaining? Not majority of it is remaining, but if at all the need is felt, there that mapping is one of those portions where, if at all a need is felt, we'll take 1 hour extra session, maybe on the next Saturday morning, that is on 15th. If we are unable to complete it by Monday, then we'll take 1 hour or 1.5 hour extra session on 15th in the morning. Okay, but let me tell you that we will cover the entire portion relevant for the examination. I'll not leave you half-hearted in this. PYQs, we will discuss, Baldev, on Friday as well and on Monday as well. Yes, Bharti. Organic component in sand make it soil. So in general, Vaibhav, in sand, you don't find the presence of organic component. Genetically modified crop grain, no. SETI, you will cover it in science and tech, the aspect of GM crops, the need for modification, the GEAC, right? That is the approval committee. All of that you will study in the portion of science and tech. We are in a portion of environment and ecology. When you cover it, there you will cover it under the portion of Cartagena Protocol, that what is the convention of biological diversity and where it is required. Ananya, when is it that you have mail? Please send a reminder, Ananya, in case. See, a lot of you have sent a mail. I generally receive a lot of mails. Please allow a time duration of 24 hours to 48 hours. Every day, I do ensure that I clear a lot of mails. A lot of you would have received my mails today also. Yesterday also, a lot of you would have received my mails as a reply. So if at all it is not replied within a couple of days, please don't hesitate to send a reminder. Okay, be gentle in your reminder. Okay, please don't be very demanding that you have not replied till now. How dare you? Please be gentle and you'll get the reply. Okay. And Pranay, I would suggest to you 11th and 12th. Based on the level of understanding that you have, always go for 11th and 12th. Jasveer, as of now, just cover the basic portions. And please ensure that you understand these GS portions and don't leave it, right? Amongst you, just to tell you the competition that you are facing, amongst you, you have candidates who are sitting here. I will not take the names, those of you, you know yourself, who are going to appear in 2025 and 2026. And they have revised the portion of general studies almost once. And they have a very good command of that. So whatever you are covering right now, try to revise it as frequently, and so that by that point of time, this becomes almost your second nature. You have already heard that one of you had said that 8 years PYQs is almost ratified in the mind. So revise it and see if you have a scope of appearing in the exam in 2025 or 2026. There is no reason why you should lower your target to only clearing the exam. You have all the resources, you have the time, you should target nothing less than a double-digit rank. That should be your target. Work towards it. Cover the general studies, start covering the current affairs. That should be your target. Okay? Yes, Nitesh. Is it necessary to study NCERTs for geography? No. You can cover the Byju's book, or I would also suggest to you, cover the tablet videos as a method of revision. That also is the updated tablet videos that you would have. So that also is very enriching. Okay. Vaibhav, tropical climate soil has more organic component than other parts of the world? Not necessary. So in the tropical evergreen region, you have very less organic component because the rate of decomposition is very high. Temperate regions are very rich with organic component. Pranay, as soon as possible. Vishal, what is your question, my dear friend? Let me take a look at it. Kindly ask a question again, Vishal, if you can. Last session, Shamali, would probably be on Monday. That would be the last session. Okay. Nitesh, for general studies, it is not at all required. Majid Hussain is not required for general studies. Organic component of material is high in temperate region because of slower rate of degradation. Yes. Okay. So that is where we'll end the session here, guys. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Okay, Vishal, your question. If a canal distance is less, the estimated cost would be less. No, so the canal distance, the estimated cost that you have seen, that is after all the optimizations which can be done, right? That because you will need to construct the reservoirs, the lift irrigation projects, the infrastructure needed, all of that will be required. So that is why it can come down, but that over a long period of time, if you think about it, it is very fruitful as well. It can have a lot of economic benefits as a result of it as well. Amit, the fluency in English, read as much as you can, my dear friend, as many different sources, as many different books, and try to listen to the language. That will improve your efficiency. The more you use anything, the better you get at it. Okay. Then Nandini, jet streams are upper tropospheric winds blowing parallel to the pressure gradient force. True or false? It is true. Because here, generally, when you find that the pressure gradient force exists between the latitudes, but it is here that the Coriolis force ends up deviating it quite significantly. That is why it becomes geostrophic in nature. Okay? So we'll see you again tomorrow. Till that point of time, take care of yourself. Goodbye and have a good night. Thank you.